Frontline Gaming presents 40K Stats Center with your host, Val Heffelfinger.
That's me.
And the Falcon.
Holy hell, there's like 2 days until the biggest Warhammer 40K tournament in history, and so we're going to have the biggest 40K Stats Center in history. Or your money back. Good thing you didn't pay for it. First thing up, we're going to do a little meta stats rundown with our man, the Falcon, fresh off his psychotic, pathological tour through every single list that has been submitted to the Las Vegas Open. I believe something like 7,000 pages of information. I don't know. I'll let him tell you.
I mean, it's 2,700.
2,700 pages. This is bullshit. I'm upset even thinking about it. And then after that, ladies and gentlemen, we've got four outstanding interviews with four of the absolute best players in 40K, and I might say for the better interviews in 40K. We've got Nick Nadavati. We've got Manny Chima, Matt Morrisali from Down Under, and wrapping it all up will be our man, Brandon Grant, telling us how he's going to do it all with his favorite army, the Astra Militarum. So why don't we segue seamlessly now and let the music fade? Peter, are you alive?
I'm barely alive. I just spent about 8.5 hours driving from my remote hometown in the middle of nowhere to Edmonton, Alberta, in the hopes that I can catch a flight first thing in the morning to Vegas. It's been a trip. I spent the last 3 days, about 8 hours a day, hammering through lists, looking for patterns, taking down unit numbers, checking for faction representation, looking for archetypes, and even doing my best to try and help out those people that may have misunderstood how a list is actually supposed to be built. Sent 10 or 11 emails out to get some people's lists fixed up so they don't get models pulled at the event.
Models pulled and no scarlet lettering of being a cheater.
Exactly. That's the whole goal, because I don't want you, if you're there running your pure, amazing Tau list that you're not trying to copy off of anybody with, and then you chose to run 9 units of drones. Just remember, you can only take 3. So
yes.
But you can give all those other guys 2 drones apiece and just make up the difference. So just do that, guys. Just go forward. That's a good one.
They probably went to the Heffelfinger School of List Building where you can bring 5 gallants.
Yep, exactly. So, and there's a few other little ones. Legends, a lot of people, I shouldn't say a lot, a handful of people forgot Legends wasn't a thing at LVO. So stuff like that. Right, it should all be cleaned up. I'm not going to say I caught everything, but I caught enough that I think we're going to have a pretty good showing, at least from a list front.
All right. Well, we rarely get to do this, so I'm throwing it in.
Crack open those spreadsheets, nerds. Because it's time to put the stats in Stats Center. Courtesy of 40kstats.com.
All right, Pete, enough with the administrivia. Let's get to some cold, hard facts. Let's look at first the overall shape of things. I did try to paraphrase some frantic messenger messages you sent me yesterday, but let's look at the faction breakdown here, just from a high level. How is the meta breaking out for the LVO?
The meta it's a Space Marine meta, just as we expected. What we're seeing is very much akin to what we've seen for probably about the last 2 months across the world in terms of what's seeing play. About 27% of lists coming to LVO are going to be the Adeptus Astartes. And
how does and literally, since I guess usually you're using the post Iron Hands FAQ as sort of the last benchmark in the meta.
Yes.
What would the faction, like, what would the share of the field be in that stretch?
In that post Iron Hands meta, it's hovered between about 25 and 27.
Okay.
So some events you get a little higher, especially in some very competitive metas, and then other events we're actually seeing at some smaller GTs is almost no Marine showings. I'm not sure if that's just a state of the area or perhaps people are kind of getting a little bored of them. Whatever. But yeah, so 25 to 27 has kind of been the where the faction has plateaued. We're not seeing much more. What we are seeing is increases in Eldar and Chaos Space Marines across the board. but they're not taking from the Marine pool. They're taking it from everybody else.
Interesting. So of that Marine pool, how do they break down into sub factions? And that this is Codex Marines too, right?
This is Codex. Yeah, I'm not talking about Blood Angels. There are a number of Blood Angels, Dark Angels, Grey Knight players. Everybody has something, unless you're a Warhound Titan. No one brought the Warhound Titan this year. He's kind of sitting alone. He's a little sad, but such is life. In terms of breakdown, Iron Hands are by far the biggest faction showing. There are 95 Iron Hands players of the 795 people in attendance. So you're looking at about 12% of the meta, almost 13, is just Iron Hands alone. I blame Brohammer for that, given essentially their entire team, other than Mark Perry, brought them. Mm-hmm. But that's a whole other thing. Then you have Imperial Fists. They've got 36 Imperial Fist players coming in, bringing that hot and heavy extra damage at the event. Next up, Raven Guard has 32 players in attendance. And then you have Ultramarines with 26.
Wow.
Yeah. Good Ultramarines showing. They always have. They were the most popular pre-Codex, right? So they've always had a decent amount. White Scars have 13 players. Crimson Fists have one old guy.
What about Salamanders?
Oh, you want to know about Salamanders? Salamanders, there are 6. Which is a lot, because that's more than 0, and we've seen essentially 0 for months now. Basically, after the Salamanders pack came out, you've seen maybe one Salamander player every couple of weeks has shown up at a single event. It's just so we have 6, which is neat.
Kind of fascinating.
They've got some interesting lists. There's it's a veritable hodgepodge. It's not like a lot of the other factions where you kind of see a template. Like Raven Guard, you're seeing the Assault Centurion combos, Centurion devs, Lias Isidon making a big showing at a lot of lists at the event for the Raptors with Raven Guard.
Mm-hmm.
Ultramarines, it's a lot of aggressors, special characters like Marnius Calgar, Gullyman. So you're getting these kind of like mobile gun lines people are building. The Iron Hands lists are pretty diverse. We're seeing this... a lot of people going with the Iron Father Pharaohs list with, like 30 to 50 intercessors.
Yeah.
Basically encircling 1 or 2 either untargetable 4 or 5 either untargetable or essentially impossible to kill dreadnoughts that just kind of wander up the board and murder stuff. And then they've all taken the Apothecary for the 5++ Feel No Pain. Imperial Fists, they're all running just a ton of intercessor spam. Seeing a couple people run flyers, not too much. But yeah, so there's some pretty extreme templates from most of the armies. Salamanders, those 6 lists, all completely different. No one's figured out what to run with them. It'll be interesting to see how they do. I think there's a list I saw that brought like a 10-man Terminator assault squad. I'm interested to see where that goes.
Okay, so if we're talking Terminator Assault Squads, that means it's time for a breathless segue over to something you tried to talk about, and I cut you off. Eldar. I think this is the one that I'm most interested in. What are you seeing amongst the sort of dominant list builds for Eldar that are showing up? What are some chestnuts? Is there a main list build that's appeared?
Sure. So in terms of like Craft World Eldar, there's 65 people that are coming with Craft Worlds. A lot are relying on kind of the old tried and true methods of fire prisms with some kind of flyer spam. There's a good amount of flyer spam. There's probably 5 or 6 lists that are straight up 9 or 10 flyers at the event. So that's definitely going to be a thing you need to look at. Ray Aomata, once again, bringing his 9. A couple other names that Ivan Cho, who's had top showings this year, also bringing out as many flyers as you can possibly fit in the list. So that's one template. The big template, and I think the one most people from a competitive perspective are very interested in, is the Warlocks Conclave, Skyrunner Conclave. There's 15 lists bringing Skyrunner Conclave. Some are running them with like a lot of Skyweaver jet bikes. You're seeing that as a trick with like Jack Harpster, for example, bringing that. And then others are running them with grotesques, like Chris Blackham using their grotesques as like an anvil to hold the board presence while the Skyrunners do their thing, flying around, basically auto-passing every psychic test they can cast and trying to win the game by being these like giant beat stick units that are very hard to pull off the board.
Fantastic. And how many have gone for that, efficient shooting Eldar that's not flyer spam? I guess the kind of stuff Colin Sherman's been talking a lot about.
Yeah, so I would say the kind of expert crafter with masterful shots combo, you're seeing that quite a bit. Just give me 1 second. I'll bring it up. Would say we probably had about, instead of saying about, I can just bring it up. There's about 17 lists running that specific combo. So that combo, expert crafters with masterful shots, a lot of people are at least taking one, if not multiple detachments with it. 18 lists, sorry. And what that brings is almost like making Eldar Imperial Fists. So they're extraordinarily accurate because they're rerolling that one hit, one wound per unit. And then they're ignoring cover. Night Spinners are everywhere at LVO. I think, and you'll have to give me a second to double check the number, but I believe there are more Night Spinners than anything else in the Eldar Codex at the event, with the exception of troops. There's just so many. So just give me 2 shakes to pop into my other spreadsheet. I'm sorry, folks, for not being super duper prepped for this.
People are just happy to have you. Don't worry.
So on my last check, and this was before I kind of went through the last probably 15 or 20 lists to make sure I hadn't made any errors, we're sitting at well over 100 Night Spinners, about 106 Night Spinners, over 39, 40 lists. So about 2/3 of all Eldar players are running triple Night Spinner.
Turns out Eldar wants that 2 damage indirect fire.
The indirect fire is the big thing, and the fact that on a 6 it's AP -4, it's going to pick up models. It does a lot of work. They're very efficient for their points. So yeah, they're absolutely everywhere. The only unit that is puts up similar numbers that's outside of the generic is Crimson Hunter Exarchs. There's also just over 100 of them. So I would say same thing. You're looking at about 35 lists bringing Crimson Hunters, and each one, when they bring them, they're bringing 3.
Fantastic. So why don't we round it out to the third, I'd say, big contender here, which of course is Chaos, and that is obviously a pretty broad brush to paint with. What are some of the archetypes we're seeing coming out with Chaos?
So there's one main archetype, and that's the possessed bomb, like in terms of like what competitive players are talking a lot about. This is a list that people tried several months ago when Vigilus Ablaze came out, and Possessed got a lot of buffs out of it, but it just wasn't quite good enough. They died way too fast was the big problem. You'd get them on the board. If they managed to get to combat, I mean, just 20 Possessed are going to do a lot of work, but it was almost impossible to get them there. But with the bonuses that Alpha Legion got, Word Bearers and Night Lords in the latest Psychic Awakening, Faith and Fury, they've kind of reached that critical mass of buffs where you can probably make at least half the squad survive up the board in most matchups, and that's all you need. It's a very cheap unit. It's like 340, 350 points, depending on how you build it, that will wipe another person's army if it gets in. So there's 22 players running Possessed Bombs, and that comes out to almost, it's about 370 Possessed are showing up at the event. Okay. Most people are running between 17 and 20, with at least one person deciding to go double Possessed Bomb just to make sure at least one of them makes it. But yeah, it's a really cool build. It's kind of like the build you're seeing TJ Lanigan run it. Austin Wingfield's got it in there. Alex Harrison. I mean, I could go on. Jim Vessel. A lot of the bigger Chaos names, this is what they've turned to. The other list that had been seeing a lot of talk, but isn't seeing maybe as much play as people would have thought, is the Corn Lord of Skulls. So a lot of people after Chapter approved got really into the Khorne Lord of Skulls as being like the list that's going to do a ton of work because they became so cheap.
Now, I got to ask you, on Chapter Tactics, this kind of got downplayed a little bit, but in the back of my head, I was like, I don't know, man. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of junk you can layer on there. Off the top of your head, can you think of some of the stuff you can juice a Lord of Skulls with just because of their keywords?
It's really not what you can juice them with. It's more the fact that like you still have enough points to take like Daredeo Dreadnoughts with them or Helldrakes or other things. And that's what you're seeing with these lists. You're not seeing a lot of people trying to buff their Lords of Skulls. They're letting them do all the work and just putting, chaff or quote unquote distraction carnifexes in the way. So there's 7 people running triple Lord of Skulls. They're going to be about 23 Lord of Skulls lists in attendance. 23 Lord of Skulls in attendance at the event. It'll be interesting to see how they do. In terms of names, I mean, Don Huson's always going to be the big one that people will turn to when they look at this list. And everybody's, I shouldn't say everybody that follows Chaos Space Marines on Reddit is going to copy Don Huson's list in the future because that's just how this works.
Is there anyone repping Renegade Knights that maybe came out with some good tech?
In terms of the Renegade Knight list, there are a ton. And the thing about Renegade Knights is coming into this event, they're one of the only factions other than Eldar that actually have a positive win rate across the board against Space Marines, at least in the kind of last couple of months after the Psychic Awakening books came into effect. They've got like a 54% win rate against most Marine lists. And what we're basically seeing with them is double or triple Knight Despoiler with Armiger Moiraxes, War Dog Moiraxes for the Chaos side, because those Moiraxes add a lot of low-grade firepower to the list, and the Despoilers are almost exclusively running double thermal cannons because they're just so efficient.
Right.
You are seeing a few lists that are going with like the old what kind of Kenny Boucher ran at SoCal this year with like triple Lord Discordant on top of triple Knight Despoiler. Huh. Not sure if that's too elite or not.
Yeah. Well, it'll be fun and quick.
Yeah, for sure. It'll either kill a lot of stuff or die real fast.
Real easy on the back. Okay, very cool. So just to wrap up this segment before we get on to the big names that we've got some nice interviews with, anything catch your eye? Like any list or design or something that you're excited to follow in our insane 36 hours of coverage on the show?
So I'm not sure how well this list is going to do, but I'm super excited about it. Only one player is running any of the Orc buggies because they're terrible. They're just, I mean, the Scrapjet maybe is okay. There is one player, one champion, one hero, we'll call him hero of the people, who is running only Orc buggies.
Who is
and it? I just want to see it. Like, I want to see what happens when someone only runs like 27 Orc buggies and tries to see what's going to happen.
Who is it?
His name, are you ready?
Yes.
It's Chris Fisher. Know who he is.
Chris Fisher.
Chris Fisher. If you are listening to this, Chris Fisher, I want you to know, I really hope this isn't a joke list that you put in because you're not actually attending the event, like some people do, and that you actually are there, because I would love to see your 27 Orc buggies just flying around, getting shot up by whoever. But if you go even like 1 and 5 at the event, I'll buy you a beer for sure.
Oh, Chris Fisher's going 2 and 5 at least.
2 and 5?
Yeah. He's going to the ghost round with a losing record. With a losing record.
2 and 4?
Yeah.
I mean, it happens, right? Mathematically, there could be. No, that's not possible.
No, it's not possible. I just can't do math on the fly. That's okay.
No.
Favorite storyline that you're looking forward to seeing unfold before our very eyes?
Favorite storyline going to LVO? I am going to have to say it's going to be how the top 3 play out. I'm really curious to see if anyone's going to be able to top Richard Siegler after the points from Atlanta Open came in. He's barely got a lead on Jim Vessel, but a lot of people have tossed Jim Vessel to the trash because his main list got thrashed to pieces, and he's been kind of scrambling to make something new work, but he hasn't had a lot of reps. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to me. Does someone like John Lennon leapfrog Siegler? If Siegler doesn't perform, I mean, this is his first event running Iron Hands, so that there's that. But I mean, these Brohammer guys, they put in work when they make these lists. So I think that's my big one: is does somebody get the points to leapfrog Siegler, and who is it?
Why not pick the biggest possible story at the biggest possible event? I love it. My personal pick is, will the stream that I have been saying is going to happen actually happen? And I'm excited to say it looks like it will. And you can find it at 40K Stat Center on Twitch. We've actually created that account, and it is ready to go there. We should have excellent coverage from the floor, supporting what our good friends Reese and Frankie will be covering on the main table on the GW stream. I'm hoping to even be able to maybe do picture-in-picture. I don't know. Maybe
it'll be super cool. I mean, we did just add a new
oh my goodness, how could I forget
guest host, right?
Yeah.
Literally today.
Yesterday,
whenever he bought that plane ticket after you peer pressured him for about 3 minutes on MSN Messenger.
That was perhaps the fastest and easiest fold I've ever seen to buy a cross-continent plane ticket. It was like, hey Tony, why don't you come to the LVO? And then he came.
I love it. I love it. So folks, just so you understand, so right now our team consists of myself, the Falcon, who's going to be running a camera on the floor, trying to find the best games for you guys to watch on the secondary stream, while Frankie and Reese do his thing. We're going to have in a booth, I don't know where the booth's going to be, maybe in the bathroom. We'll make it work.
Actually, it's projected to be next to the bathrooms, so...
Even better. And that's going to be with Adam Camilleri, the mouth from the absolute furthest possible south, from the Down Under Network / now Art of War Network. And we've got Paul Murphy on there from Forge the Narrative.
Mouth from a different south.
From a different south. Also providing just the best possible coverage we can. Val's up in some weird land running a drone. He's going to be making sure that when systems go down, he fixes them. He may do some charismatic interviews. We don't know. And now we've got Tony Pierce, the man, the myth, the legend,
the Panda
also
Pants.
known as the Panda Pants over on Reddit. If you follow Sir Panda Pants over on Reddit, he's the guy that provides you with all the juicy week-to-week tournament coverage, either via 40kstats.com or just his hard work gathering those lists for you guys. He's a great guy. He's one of our best friends. He's one of the backup co-hosts whenever Val or I get way too sick to do this job. He's just an excellent folk, and he just on a whim bought a ticket to LVO just to help us out. So he'll be there. He'll be helping with grabbing people for interviews. We may even get him on a mic. He is by far the handsomest of all 5 of us. So he probably is going to get as much camera time as we can get him.
You know, as the least knowledgeable, I was hoping I could at least maybe hang on to most handsome, but
you were almost there. But we had to bring in an actual personal trainer. I mean, you got height on him. So if worse comes to worse,
it's true.
It'll just be like Capital City Bloodbath, where you are just significantly taller than everyone you interviewed.
A monster. Yes. So we've got a lot going on, a lot of moving parts, and luckily a whole lot of hours to figure it out. So come and join us. And I think it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. It's going to be a lot of fun. So without further ado, we're going to hit that BCP bump, an extra special BCP bump, because I believe they're somewhere around their 3rd birthday now, and they'll be the ones powering the LVO, and all those stats you're going to be following from your desk at work. Here we go.
Tournament news is made possible by BestCoastPairings.com. Download the BCP TO app to organize events for just about any tabletop game system. Download the player app to easily find and participate in events from around the world. Subscribe to BCP for as little as $5 a month to support the team and unlock additional features. Available for iOS and Android. BestCoastPairings.com. Competitive events easier.
All right, Mr. Falcon, we are now going to introduce our first guest on the show, the most infamous 40K player, I think, still in existence, the one, the only, Nick the Brown Magic Nanavati, in an interview with yours truly. But I thought maybe we would quickly talk a little bit about Nick with you, Falcon. What's your favorite Nick moment?
My favorite Nick moment? It's hard to say. I think there was that one time what was it? Was it SoCal, where he came up to his table and he looked at it and said, "I can't win this game," and then proceeded to destroy his opponent in about 7 minutes. I think that was probably it.
That's a pretty good Nick moment.
Pretty good. I mean, the guy is full of them. His win, to be fair, his win at the 2017 now? 2018 LVO? Was it 2018? It was 18 by then. It had flipped over. Is probably the best Nick Nanavati moment you can have. It actually was a shining moment in my start to my 40K following career from a more competitive perspective. His game against Tony Crabando, the narrative that forged between the two of them with what had happened previously with Tony and Alex Fennell, and then what happened during their game. Like I was absolutely abuzz. I was messaging buddies. I was like, "Can you believe this even happened?" And they were like, "We don't care about anything that you're talking about." And I was like, "Well, you need to. This is incredible.
I'm going to dedicate a large portion of my life to making sure people care about this
because it's worth it." And I mean, to this day, we get to watch all these amazing narratives break down, and that was one of the first really, really. Like, it was poetic how that game played out.
It was awesome. It was definitely a wonderful crescendo. And what's the word? Cosmic justice? Instant karma? Instant karma. There we go.
Something like that.
Anyway, so a lot of people are talking about Nick, half jokingly, but also not really, having a bit of a down year for Nick. Do you think that's accurate?
I would say...
For a guy in fourth place?
Yeah, I mean, yes. He's the thing about Nick is a down year for Nick is if he doesn't win 3 or 4 big events, right? And what we saw this year was a lot of second place finishes. He finished second at Beef and Wing. He finished second at CTC. He finishes second at a bunch of team tournaments. And then he really only has one win this year, and it was at a very small GT, Spring Conflagration. So yeah, his numbers aren't what you'd normally expect. That being said, he gets second place at Atlanta Open in a really tight brawl. He is top table at many, many more. So like his name is always going to be out there, and he always produces results. I believe this year, if I'm not mistaken, in GTs and majors, at least that I've covered, he's 51-10-1, and that's not a poor record at all. 51 wins, 10 losses, 1 draw, and he's beating his opponents 30-17 on average.
That's no slump.
No,
for my chair.
Those are the numbers that match up to any of the say top 10, 20 players in the world, and are better in some cases. That low end 17, there aren't too many players that can boast having that low an against record.
That's amazing. Okay, any final thoughts about Nick before we kick it over to an interview with Nick?
Super excited to hear what he has to say about his list. I know he's been talking about it online because he completely 180'd. He went away from the Iron Hands he's been playing for a while. He did have a quick game with a kind of Skyrunner conclave at an event that I don't think panned out the way he wanted it to. And now he's turned to White Scars, and it's a very unique list. I love how it plays on paper, and I'm super interested to hear what he has to say about it.
Your origin story is somewhat known, but I'd like to be a bit more specific. How did you get into competitive 40K specifically, rather than, playing dollies with dice?
I kind of just fell into it gradually. I've always been a competitive person. It's the brown in me, So I was a kid, but I went to my local stores, RTTs, whenever they ran them every few months. And I just enjoyed going. I got my butt kicked every time because I was 11, 12 years old. But I enjoyed it. I had fun. And I didn't care that I lost. I strived to be better, not really. Because I guess when you're a kid, you don't care about success. You just care about having fun.
Well, I don't know. As a kid playing Warhammer, did you get super frustrated? As a grown-ass man, I am terrible at not getting frustrated.
I got frustrated a lot more with building the models. I was terrible at building models.
Gotcha.
If it was a complicated kit, oh my God, forget it. But no, I enjoyed playing. I really enjoyed list building. I guess that makes sense given my job now. But yeah, I would just enjoy playing 40K for the sake of playing 40K. I was also a lot more casual with it, despite wanting to be competitive. I went to mega battles. Mm-hmm. I played in campaigns, all kinds of stuff. I just enjoyed experiencing 40K as a kid. And then as I got like slightly older, we're talking like 14, 15, 16, I started going to like larger GTs that were in like relatively easy driving distance, like an hour, 2, 3 hours. I would make my parents drive me as a kid, and like they would hate it, but they loved me, so they would do it. Very nice of them. And then I would like just play again, get my butt kicked at the larger venues, real competition. But over time, I got better. I don't know. I guess just getting older made me smarter, and then that obviously helps in a game that's strategy based. So experience definitely played in because I've been playing for so long already, even though it was like kind of silly nonsense playing.
Yeah.
And it just translated eventually, and over time, it just started to click more and more, and here we are now.
So what was your first like large event win?
So it wasn't a win, but I was 14. I think I was 14. It was 2008, I want to say. Maybe it was 15. Doesn't matter. And I went to, this is the first time I ever flew for a GT, and it's because I had family in the area, so I like made a excuse basically. My parents were going to see family, and I was like, bring me, and I want to play in this tournament. They're like, no. And somehow begging and whining got me there. And it was the Necronomicon in Florida. This is like 100,000 years ago, 2008. And it was, I don't remember how many people it was, maybe 60, 70. It was a big deal at the time back then because there weren't so many GTs. And there were big names at the time then, like Mark Parker, probably some others I don't remember at all. And I went undefeated, that's never a thing I've done before. And it was a 5-round GT, what would probably have been considered a major back then, even by today's standards, maybe. And I didn't win, but I got like second place because battle points, which I was super stoked about either way.
Yeah.
And then I felt like I was like making it, like, oh wow, I actually am good at this game. And a lot of that success, unfortunately, in hindsight, was due to luck. And probably the game was at a younger state, I would say. So the level of skill I attained back then wouldn't carry me nearly as far today, but the game wasn't as competitive back then, so I got away with it.
All this garbage that you've been doing with coaching people and like teaching the game, like I just can't win an RTT anymore, and it's your fault. It's not possible.
Well, it's my win rate has also gone down a fair bit. I'm doing too good of a job out here.
This is awful. Stop this now, okay? Let's go back to the good old days.
Everyone's terrible, and then it'll be fine.
Yeah. I could just win on matchups sometimes. It was great. Anyway, all right. So segueing a little bit, you are the Brown Magic. You won the ITC and LVO in the year 2018.
That's correct.
Sparking, I think that was kind of like perhaps the watershed moment for competitive 40K. I think that was when things started getting a little more legit. My read. I don't know if you agree.
It was kind of a perfect storm per se. I had just recently stopped working at Revlon, my real-time big boy job, so I had a lot more free time to pursue competitive 40K, and then the Tony thing happened, of course. And as you put it, the watershed moment, it was very much like, which direction is the hobby going? And then with some driving forces, frontline, getting more deeply involved, myself, other people, legitimizing the game competitively, we just escalated to what it is today and still going.
Oh yeah, I think it continues to grow, and that's fantastic. So coming forward to this year, now I just want to say we've been asking people, and we'll ask you too, who they think the favorite to win it is, and a lot of people are saying Nick Natavati is due, and that sounds a lot like what have you done for me lately, Nick? So how's your year gone, and how would you break it down as far as your play experience has been?
Very interestingly,
you're still in fourth, fifth. Where are you?
I think fourth is last.
Like, so it's like it's not like a failure of a year, but you haven't.
I'm a scrub. Yeah. No, so I think this is really interesting because I've been placing very consistently. Like I top 8 pretty much every event I go to. I've gotten second, I think 55 times this year. I can't even tell you. So definitely a bit of the bridesmaid lifestyle this year.
That means you've played in more GTs than there are weeks in the year, but that's fine.
Yes, that's true. I do have some wins, so it's not like I'm just doing nothing out here. I won the Spring Conflagration Tournament, which is just like a small 40-person GT in the middle of nowhere, Minnesota. Very proud of that one, obviously.
When is that in the year? Maybe I should go hit that out.
That's in May, or at least it was this past year. I went because I had a place to stay for free, and I was visiting my friend Tyler DeVries. So was just good, convenient, fun tournament, see some friends. Then, of course, I was on Team English here, and then we won ETC. So that is certainly not my win, but I definitely want to believe that I contributed to it. And then I won the Nova Invitational. So while it's only a 32-person invite-only tournament, it is pretty hard, so they say. So
pretty tricky. Yeah,
I'm not doing nothing out here. But,
also, I totally forgot you won that, by the way. So there you go.
Well, thanks.
Kudos.
Yeah, thanks. But yeah, I definitely haven't brought home the number of first places that I have in the past. Traditionally, at this point, I've won Adepticon 4 times. And then the year I didn't win Adepticon, I won LVO. So pretty much every year for the past 5 years, I've won a super major.
You're going down swinging on top tables at them still. I mean, even the year that you didn't win Adepticon, you lost to Matt Rhett running Crazy Tyranids.
In the finals.
In the finals. You've lost top table a bunch this year as well.
Yeah. I lost to Richard Siegler on the top tables of Pro Tabletop. So it's not like, I keep saying this, but like, I'm relevant, guys. Pay attention to me.
Well, fourth place ITC is still relevant, and I think there's no doubting that. So I think you've talked a little bit about this on Art of War, and I suggest everyone go back and listen to the episode where Richard interviews Nick. But you kind of get into some of the reasons behind your year and why you think you may have come up short. And a lot of that had to do with switching around on armies. Do you want to comment about that a little bit? You're now freed from the shackles of your orcs.
I had the intention to stick with Gene Steeler Cult the entire year through and just rock it because they were super flexible. I really enjoyed their play style. They were really strong, and that was my plan. And then a combination of the Marine meta and then Chapter Approved boning my army in half basically meant that was a suicide mission. So had to change yet again. Swapped over to Space Marines, and I figured if I got an early jump on Space Marines in like October, by the time LVO rolls around in the end of January, I'll have enough time to get pretty decent with them. And that's more or less what I've been working on all season. So it's been working, but still both of the losses that I have in Super Majors so far with Space Marines have been attributed, or I could attribute them to a lack of experience with my army. At a super high level. Like I'm making like micro mistakes, but that's the ones that'll kill you against like Richard Siegler at the top table.
Yeah.
So it's not like I've solved my problem here.
Well, hey, maybe the meta solved it for you because old Siegler is now going to be playing catch up with you, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's true. He did just recently swap over to Iron Hands, although his version of Iron Hands is actually a Tau army in disguise, so I don't know how different it'll be.
Okay, well, we'll see. There are other things that go on that you have to understand.
Of course.
But anyway, okay, so that's your so. For you, I mean, obviously you had some great moments this year. What was your biggest moment or biggest win or whatever? What's something that stands out for you this year that you'd like to highlight?
Honestly, it's not actually related to any wins I've done. Probably starting Art of War, leaving Knights of the Game Table and making my own brand with it. I just love that I was able to take that step for myself and go the direction I really want. So that's more of a personal goal, I guess, than a 40K goal, but it's related to 40K, so I'll count it. As far as wins go, ETC is always going to be my number one. It's a team event, so I can't claim it as my own, and I don't. Obviously, every member of my team had so many hours put into it, and every member matters in every round, so no one person can claim any credit. But it's the hardest tournament in the year by far, and so much planning and prep goes into it. So to win it 2 years in a row on two different teams is truly an honor. And I think I'm the only person ever to win it on two different teams, so that's cool too.
I would think so. I would think that's probably pretty damn unique. And depending on what they do this year.
Well, some people have played on different teams.
Yes.
But
to win is a different story.
Yeah.
Normally, Mercs, as I'm sure they're hotly debating, normally that's a more desperation play for a team. Rather than
right.
But
we're not going to get into that.
It's okay. Hey, if they change those, my dream for Team Canada is to be Team America's farm team. I've been saying this for years. We should be the 4 best Canadians, and then four of the runner-up Americans. I think it would work really well. Anyway, okay, so that's the highlight. I think that's a pretty obvious slam dunk highlight. What a wonderful team that was too. A lot of great people on it, and just like a really great arc.
They were a treasure to play with. Like I really enjoyed my time with England.
Just a real technical approach to that tournament too. My favorite 40K, this is my highlight. My favorite 40K Stat Center the entire year, by the way, everybody, is the ETC episode. I think that stands the test of time, listenable in any season. Go back and listen to it if you haven't already. It's fantastic. Okay, that's enough plugging for me. So let's move on now. We're here on a LVO hype show. We're 15 minutes into this interview. And we should probably talk about the LVO. My first question is, what are you playing at the LVO, and why isn't it the Possessed Bomb, you so-called Chaos fan?
All right, so the Possessed Bomb is real, and the Chaos is at my heart. I played one game with the Possessed Bomb, and I haven't touched Chaos pretty much in a year because I went from Orcs to Gene Stealer Cult to now Marines.
If I'm not mistaken, you are an early innovator of the Possessed Bomb?
That's true. I put time into Possessed before they got good, I'll say. Before they got Alpha Legion, before they got points drops, before all this stuff that made them actually work. I was all on like Death Guard, Nurgle, Possessed. There's so much here. And like the strats were close. The synergy was there. It just had too many hurdles to overcome to really make it on the top tables. So the idea was never fleshed out and explored, at least not by me. I think Mark Perry put some time into it, but it's a middling success. Then, not to put anything against Mark, it's just a hard army to.
No, he's middling. I get it.
Yeah. Then this happened. I, went crawling back to my first love, Chaos, and I was like, well, let's make some stuff happen here. I put it on the table, and the not playing Chaos for a year came like rushing to throw itself in my face. It's like, I can't switch to Chaos 2 months before LVO. I just don't have the practice. I don't have the reps. This army, I get its concepts, but it's too complex on the actual execution for me to get right 10 times out of 10. I can go 5-1 with it, I'm sure, just through competent play and understand the army really well. But to make that elusive top 8 against the top players and then to go further and try to win the event, I just don't think I had the experience with it. So,
all right,
maybe after LVO.
So okay, we'll let you off the hook there. So now, what are you playing? Lists are in. In fact, I think they've been revealed, so you can actually talk freely about this. What's Nick bringing to the LVO?
I think just about everyone, including myself, expected me to play my Iron Hands Brigade or something along those lines, because I've been rocking with it since October and like multiple second place finishes at Pro Tabletop, 5-1 at SoCal. Wars in Atlanta, Best General. So I was doing the workout here with the Iron Hands Brigade, and
still relevant, folks. Still relevant.
Yeah, of course. What happened basically was Fist came out, and they were a tough match. Not unwinnable by any stretch, but they were tough. So whatever, we can adapt. We can make some tweaks, handle some Fists. Possessed came out, and it's like, okay, this is tough too. So adapt a little bit, make some tweaks. Fists and Possessed are polar opposites on the problem scale. Like Fists shoot you with artillery, Possessed charge you with Possessed, and they're unshootable. So it's like, well, solving both at the same time is a little bit difficult, but we can make it work, I guess. And then LVO goes ahead 3 days before list submission due, and then they put out this terrain format, which most people probably just was like, oh, cool, terrain. And I was like, oh my God, terrain. It's a very drastic difference from the formats I was expecting and the terrain layouts I'm used to.
Yeah.
I actually covered it a lot in depth on an Art of War article on my website, theartofwar40k.com. Shameless plug.
Nice.
Then it basically sent me into my Iron Hands just aren't going to work mode. At least, again, I probably could go 5-1 with them, but against those top players, too much stacked against me, not going to go the long distance with it. And I've been talking a big game up on White Scars for the past few months that they were one of the strongest Marine factions, just super unexplored, and through the lack of time and good players just gravitating towards the more obvious builds due to lack of time, like Iron Hands or Imperial Fists. So no one's really put the time into White Scars. I know Nick Rose has been putting the time in himself lately, so I've been helping him with that, getting some ideas flowing on the White Scar train in the background, and then I guess I just decided, go for it, YOLO. Let's play some White Scars.
You YOLO to White Scars?
I YOLO'd to White Scars. That's the long story I'm getting at here.
So let me get this straight. So you've gone to White Scars. Lennon's gone to Fists?
No, he YOLO'd to Fist and then YOLO'd again to Iron Hands.
Oh, he's back down to Iron Hands. Okay, but he was already running sort of an Iron Hand hybrid. Okay.
Well, he was running a Scar Iron Hand mix. Now he's gone pure Iron Hands, yeah.
And Siegler went from Tau to Iron Hands.
Siegler actually went from Tau to Fist to Iron Hands, so
Okay.
everyone's just all over the place.
This is awesome.
Rose went from Iron Hands to Scars.
Yeah.
Uh,
Hilarious.
Alex Harrison went to Possess. Just nothing makes sense in this.
This is
LVO.
wonderful. Okay, so that's great. And my question to you then would be, oh man, we didn't bring Harrison in on these. He's gonna be mad. Oh well. Don't be mad at me, Harrison.
Oh well.
The thing I would ask you is, why? So you spent 5-10 minutes talking about how you couldn't possibly change armies. You've been practicing Iron Hands the whole time. And it's not like
doctors make the worst patients, coaches make the worst coachees. That applies to me so hard.
So why what is the meta call you see in White Scars other than it being kind of snowflakey in my view? And I don't know what I'm talking about. So tell me, why White Scars?
No, snowflakey, and it's snowing out here, so fitting. Is part of the reason, not for the sake of snowflakiness, but White Scars being what they are is no one knows what they do.
Okay.
Like, you might understand White Scars in theory. They got Master Snares, Assault Doctrine, damage +1, movement tricks, but like that's fairly nebulous. Those are non-specific what they do. So I'm hoping, not to get you people, but I'm hoping people's lack of experience can carry me fairly far with the White Scars. Because it's one thing to know what they do. Like, I'll explain to people, I'm not a gotcha kind of player. But it's another thing to understand what they do. Like, I can tell you my Smash Captain can move 30 inches and charge you. But then, do you know what that actually means as far as where you should put your models? Like, that's a different story.
I want to say 31 inches away would be where you put the models.
Nah, that's too simple.
That's my guess. I'm just guessing.
So, also, I think White Scars have a very interesting anti-marine meta perspective on them. They do go to damage 3 in Assault Doctrine. Damage +1. So, like,
damage
regular
2,
dudes are damage 2. Everyone's running Intercessors these days because Scouts just died of Thunderfires. So that's their meta teching for opposing Thunderfires as Intercessors. So I'm meta teching for anti-Intercessors with damage 2 on my army. Things like I can stack multiple damage modifiers. So, like, if I have a Thunderhammer on a Smash Captain, he's damage 3. And then I have the +1 of damage from Mastercrafted, and then I have +1 damage from my Doctrine. So I'm damage 5. The way having damage from, like, the Iron Hands Dreadnought strat, or the Space Marine Dreadnought strat, rather, works with bonus modifiers is not damage 5 half to 3. It's 3 half to 2, +1 for Mastercraft, +1 for White Scars. So it's actually damage 4 still. So I get around those little interactions really well. And there's just lots of tricks. So I think it's a very interesting left field meta call, but fundamentally, I didn't feel like my Iron Hands could hang with Fists on a pure damage output thing. Like, from a efficiency standpoint, Fist was just going to beat me in raw power. So I figured if I can't hang with Fists on raw power, let me go as hard as possible down the other direction and just play tricky, janky stuff. Yeah. So that'll let me at least try to leverage some skill and hopefully pull out some wins where I have no business winning. But this could totally backfire, and you'd watch me flame out, go 2-4 to LVO, and lose my job. It's going to be great.
So as usual, it seems like your battle plan is just outplay them.
Yes. Yes.
I love you, man. So this is actually kind of neat. I mean, like, the White Scars is one thing, but I've been talking to everyone about how the LVO, just because of the way 8th edition is kind of set up, it's kind of a blind corner is what I've been saying to a lot of the other guests. Like, the meta is wildly different than the last time we checked in. Like, the last, like, major, like, big time event, I'm going to forget something, but I don't think so. It's probably the Atlanta Open, as far as like something that a lot of people pay attention to. And that meta was really 2 months old, because that
meta at the time was basically the same meta as SoCal, because Fists weren't legal, Salamanders, not that they matter, were not legal.
And so everyone's been talking about where are the Imperial Fists, because I think they were supposed to be some hotness, and now maybe.
And that's what's happening. And also Psychic Awakening came out there since then too, and Chapter Proved, of course. So the meta from basically October to where we are now has shifted so much. So this is all just kind of me adapting or trying to.
Well, everyone's kind of got a guess, and it was funny that essentially, like, all of you guys have made sort of a move and another move. It's really funny. It's
there's actually a little bit of a chess game, I guess. I never thought of it like that, between the top players teching for each other.
Yes. 100%. It's great. I love it. Do more of it. Okay, cool. So let's wrap it up. I've used up a lot of your time, and we've got a other people interview, not just you, even though I could
Clearly, I'm the only one who matters.
I could chat with you all day, Nick. But
I know,
let's
Val.
since we have this game of cat and mouse, smoke, cloaks and daggers. What do you think winds up being and comprising the top 8?
So I would say I expect 4 to 5 Marine armies. Yeah, I wouldn't expect like 6, 7, or 8, and I don't expect some crazy low number like 3 or 2. I would say definitely 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
Chaos and Eldar will probably make up the remainder, being 2 Chaos, and I'll say the builds don't both have to be possess bombs. We might see a Dark Horse build, like Matt Morrisoli is bringing kind of an old school Thousand Sons Playbear type thing, so that's interesting. Justin Curtis always does his own weird things, so that's cool too.
Mm-hmm.
And then you might see something Dark Horsey like Tau. Brian Pullen's still rocking Tau, so he's definitely a contender. I don't want to bet against Brandon. I love Brandon, but I think he's not trying to win LVO this year with Guard. I think he knows that.
Oh, yeah.
I could be putting words in his mouth.
No, he's put those words in his mouth. Although he also would never, like, even if he was trying, he wouldn't say, yeah, I'm going to try to win the LVO. He's trying to win the game in front of him, man. One game at a time. He's the Bill Belichick of Warhammer, okay?
Yeah, I don't think we'll have a dark horse of who is this player in there. You might have someone breaking out, but then they will also continue to have a new year moving forward or a good year moving forward.
I'm telling you, man, if there was ever a meta where you could have a random guy just accidentally win with Iron Hands or some shit, I think it's this one. Everyone else is like getting so like technical and specific, and someone just gets first turn fucking 9 times in a row and blows everyone away.
You know, that's true. That's true. But I think the level of top talent, or at least close to top talent out there right now, is higher than the number of people that are going to be undefeated at round 6 or round 5 even.
Sure,
like,
yes.
So
right.
If you're like an average player, I'm not even talking about low average, just average player with Iron Hands or Imperial Fists or Go First, Win Monkey style army, by the time you hit round 5 or 6...
Sorry, can we break that down? A Go First, Win Monkey style army?
Go First, Win Monkey style. God, copyright that. So if you're a type of player who's relying on that to be your win condition, that's not going to work against someone who's of a very solid skill level.
Okay.
And then I think there's so many top players these days where you're going to run into that guaranteed by round 5 or 6.
Well, when you run into my horse in the race, Bubbles the Chimp, in fucking the Shadow round, I hope he has no mercy on you.
Bubbles the Chimp is a Dragon Ball Z character, and your references are not lost on me.
Yeah, I thought that was Michael Jackson's monkey.
Oh, it might be too. It might be. Maybe he named it after Dragon Ball Z. Maybe Dragon Ball Z named it after him. We'll never know.
Moves and counter moves when you're talking with Nick Nanavati, even in the references. This is getting deep. All right,
in the references.
So, what's your goal What's your goal at the LVO? Most obvious question ever lobbed up to anyone.
Yeah, I mean the dream is to win, right? Yeah. So I'd say that's my goal, but you can never set that as like I'm gonna win. Obviously, no, it's not an expectation.
No, there's a difference between expectations and goals, but yeah.
Yeah. I would really like to make top 8 with White Scars. I think it's got the power to. I think it's dark horsey and cool, and like that'd be a cool statement. Like there's 5 people who signed up as White Scars according to some dude's stats, so that'd be a really cool thing. Yeah, we'll say that's my goal.
It's fucking galaxy brain, bud. All right. Then finally, aside from yourself, who do you think is gonna win the Las Vegas Open?
I think Richard Siegler is going to do it. I do. I think he is. Yeah. I think he's got. I really, really like his list. I think he's probably the strongest all-comers list you could possibly come up with. Makes me kind of jealous, to be honest. Mm-hmm. He's also my teammate, so I'm a little invested in doing well. But he's such a strong player. Like I played him twice, and both times, you know how sometimes when you lose a game and you feel like maybe you shouldn't have lost, but things happen. Okay. Every time I played Siegler, I felt like I should have lost. Like not like I was playing a poor game out there, but he played a better game than I did both times. So he beats you on the strategic level, not the micro level. So if someone's going to bring it down, and I had to put money on it, I'd put money on him.
I think it's gonna be fun. I can't wait to see how Bubbles does. I hope you don't cross paths.
Bubbles is never going to win this. I'm telling you, I got Bubbles' number.
Bubbles' number is 69 for the record. I bought the jersey myself. Well, I think that's it, man. Anything you would like to plug or say before we wrap it all up?
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, I've recently started my new brand coaching service called The Art of War. I'm going to be going to Florida, like literally flying from Vegas to Florida. But yeah, I'm going there to start being on an esports team with the Obey Alliance guys and Richard Siegler and Mark Perry, and we're going to do a lot of 40K streaming content creation.
Do you guys have like a channel people can like sub and like hit the bell on, or is that?
Oh,
not
absolutely. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we have a Twitch stream with no videos on it yet, but as soon as I get down to Florida, we're going to be cranking out 2-3 games a week on that thing.
Sick.
So you'll pay attention to that. This is all The Art of War or Art of War 40K or something along the lines of Art of War, depending on which platform. And we do have a website, theartofwar40k.com. So check us out. Also got a podcast, all kinds of stuff.
Second best podcast on this network, I'd say.
Yeah. Maybe the first, but we'll let the audience decide that one.
We'll have to. In which case, like third best. Okay, so that's been wonderful. Thank you for your time, Nick. I wish you all the best of luck at the LVO, and I'm sure we'll see each other high five, and maybe we'll even get you on our live stream for some post game stuff.
Sweet. Yeah, Val, looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
And if there's a drone hovering over your table, just be cool.
Tournament news.
Hey guys, this is Nick Nanavati from
The Art of War,
where I teach you how to become a better 40K player. And you're listening to 40K Stats Center.
Next up, we've got a bit of a legend in the making, I would say. Manny Chima.
I'm not even sure if it's in the making. I think it's already here.
Well, I just feel like he's a name that's on the lips of a lot of, let's say, more North American podcasters, because the UK doesn't really podcast, except for Stephen Box. He's got one.
He is, and it's now in the top 8 podcasts in all of 40K, apparently, and he's put out like an episode and a half.
Well, I guess that's great for Stephen Box. Speaking of which, if you're listening to this, why not give us a like and a subscribe and, I don't know, a thumbs down on Stephen Box's podcast. Okay, no, don't do that. He's nice.
He is, and he could beat us up.
He's a treasure. He wouldn't beat us up, though.
He wouldn't, but he could.
I guess. Maybe that's his angle, is just the threat of punishment. Regardless, we're here to talk about Manny Chima and the legend that I think is growing in the North American sphere of things. Pete, why is that? What is so great about Manny Chima?
He's extraordinarily charismatic. He's got a look that you can get into, and he's practically undefeated this year in tournament play. The guy is a treasure. Like you said, he's a pleasure to interview. We've had him on the podcast, I don't know, 5 or 6 times. This year in majors alone, I don't even know if this includes any. I think it has 1 GT. He's had 5 undefeated events with disparate lists. He ran a Tau broadside spam list earlier in the year at Big Bristol Major and absolutely destroyed everyone, went undefeated there. He had an Imperium list where he was kind of running a leaf blower style that he went undefeated with multiple times. His Chaos list he's gone undefeated with, and more recently Marines. He's been doing a lot of work with Marines. He came in second at London GT with Eldar. Like, the guy has run basically everything you can and been absolutely dominant with all of it.
Crushing it, as they may say. Yes, and Marines was sort of where he was. He was doing the podcast circuit a little bit even before he took an interview with us. And everywhere I heard him talking, he was talking about really, taking an already absurd Centurion Marine meta and just cranking that up a little bit. And then he did a bit of a 180 on that list.
Yeah, for sure. He's now gone and decided that if there's going to be terrain at LVO, he is going to pretend it doesn't exist. So his list is just straight up Imperial Fists with as much ignore line of sight as he can get. He's got, I believe, 3 Relic Scorpius in that list, 3 Thunderfire Cannons, 3 Rapier Carriers, and just a smattering of units to kind of block them off if something bad happens. It's a devastating list. If that thing goes first against pretty much anybody, you're in a lot of trouble real quick.
Excellent foreshadowing for when we talk about this with Manny. He has a great quote on that very topic. I want to ask, just from a broader perspective, though, very quickly, what are your thoughts on these pretty massive pivots that some of the biggest, highest ranked players anyway have made in their army and faction choices. Like we've got Ziegler changing, Nick Nanavati changed. We're talking about Manny here, shifted from what he's been playing most recently, but as you said, he's been all over the place this year with great success. Do you think everyone can be like Manny and handle that kind of a pivot?
No, I think we've talked about this before when we talked about the importance, especially at a certain level of play, with maintaining a list. Unless you're the type of person that can get in 4 games a week, 5 games a week with high quality players, like at the drop of a hat, like say the Brohammer guys. I mean, they have team meetings at like Denny's where they go over lists with scrap boards and
it's probably a Shoney's.
Shoney's, sorry. I apologize to all Floridians. But yeah, so you got guys like this that are doing that extra work. I feel that they're probably a little more comfortable making large pivots from lists and trying to play this sneaky game. You got guys on the East Coast like the two Nicks, Nick Rose and Nick Nanavati, who have both kind of made this a very quick switch to White Scars. And it's the same idea where, they can have a weekend where everybody from Beast Coast shows up, and that's, like 5 or 6 of the top players in the world, and just play games for 3 days. And then you have events like Charity Hammer that these guys go to where they can kind of test side lists that play very similarly to what they're thinking about, so they get an idea. And there's also a game within a game here at this level, I think, where people are trying to trick their opponents into practicing against one specific list when they're going to immediately curve into something else.
Amazing. A little above the table gameplay. Awesome. I think you guys are in for a treat. Here's me talking to Manny.
You're not, and not only that, they're not the only ones who I've heard this from. A lot of people will be like, yeah, Nick Brown, sure, but I don't know if you've heard of this guy named Manny Chima. So there's some hype behind Manny Chima. Who is this man? Who is this caped crusader? And wow. I don't think we have a good idea yet of your origin story. A lot of the Americans, they're on podcasts every 5 minutes, and we get to hear their origin stories. But I want to know, Manny, where did you get into competitive 40K? How did it start for you?
Okay. So I've actually only been playing the game for 5 years now, I believe. It was towards the middle of 7th I came in. So I've only ever played this game in 7th and 8th edition. And it's actually quite funny because I've not played anything except for competitive 40K. I went paintballing with a group of lads.
Okay.
And they used to play Warhammer, so one of them got me into it, and then a couple of lads that I used to play Magic the Gathering with were like, actually, we're going to this Warhammer 40K tournament. Would you like to come? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure, why not? And I went to this tournament, got absolutely smashed, but then I also had a lot of fun, made loads of friends, and got really, really drunk. So I really enjoyed it, and I was like, oh, you know what? I want to go to more of these with you guys. It's actually quite fun. But I would not like to lose. So I thought, you know what, let's try our best to get good at the game. And I played a lot of practice games with my friends, and Dan was a part of this group. Dan became a part of this group at the same time I did. And since then I've just played loads of games and went to tournaments to get better. And that's literally where I came in. I played for about 1 year straight, and then got noticed by Team England. And
wow. And then they brought you in on the academy, eh? They were like, "We need this guy in the system."
Yeah, that's it. So they brought me in, and I've been on Team England ever since. So I've been playing the game 5 years, and I've been playing for England for 4 years.
That's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
so
it's pretty cool.
By the sound of it, you had some nerd game bona fides previous to 40K. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So I used to enjoy paintballing a lot. And I thought that was absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
And that was pretty crazy. But then it was quite expensive also. And then we started playing Magic the Gathering, and I really enjoyed that. We'd just meet up at my friend's house. It would be at different people's houses all the time, and we'd just play Magic the Gathering for hours and hours and just talk about crap and have a laugh, really.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed that. And then the minute we started going to 40K tournaments, I was like, this is really cool.
Yeah.
And then from there, I started doing like consistently well, sort of like top 10ing in tournaments.
So did you have any, like, I mean, you're in the UK, right? Like in North America, it's very easy to have I'd never even seen a Games Workshop or a Warhammer store, but in the UK, I feel like I'd imagine every major mall has a Warhammer store in the UK.
Yeah,
like,
so
they're around a lot
I live
more.
I live in Wolves, and in Wolves we have a store in town.
Right. So like you must have known about this game. Like what did you think it was? Like you're out there like playing paintball.
At the start,
like
yeah. So this is the thing, because I went to a grammar school for like 2 years, and when I went to this grammar school, the kids used to play it, and I used to make fun of them.
Sure.
I was that guy. I used to make fun of them playing with these little. I used to be like, "Oh, you guys playing with your Barbie dolls again?"
Yeah.
And then there you go. Like 5 years later, I'm playing it and I'm loving it. So yeah, it's brilliant. I love it. I think it's great, and I love how much the competitive scene has grown in the last couple of years. I think it's amazing.
Timeline. When was like your first major splash? What was your first big win in competitive 40K?
Okay, so it was actually I'm pretty proud of it, and I didn't get selected the first time when I applied for Team England, so I was using demons, and I switched to the TriStar. I was running like triple Death Star demons.
I think you and Innes and like other guys from Europe are the only people who I ever speak to, and they get nostalgic for 7th edition jank. Like you can see you're getting like all starry eyed like right now, talking about all these like buffs on buffs.
Yeah, there was some
So what did you
funny
do with
stuff in there, and I think that was it. So I got asked to come along to England practice events, because I'd played for about 8 months at this point, and I went to Allies of Convenience, which is a big tournament that happened in Warrington, and it was ran by Team Wales, and I met all the England lads there, like Chewy, Josh, all of them guys, and I came fourth from out of nowhere. Like no one's ever heard of me before, and I won 4 games and drew 1 and came fourth. But then I got noticed, and then they asked me to come along to practice events, and I did. And then I used demons all year, and I didn't get picked because there was somebody already on the team that does play demons as well. So I was like, okay, no problem, fair enough. But then the month after selection, when I didn't get picked, was Caledonian Revolution, which is one of our biggest majors that we have in the summer. And I went to that tournament, and then I beat Chu, who's our vice captain, Josh, who is our captain, and also I beat Sam Madadi with his own list in the final. So I was really proud of that. I was like, wow, that's actually my first ever win in a major. And for it to come just after I didn't get selected for Team England, I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, actually. And then it happened that the demon player for that year who got picked over me lost his passport, so I got to go in the end.
40K players are perpetually challenged with passport issues. I don't know what the hell. Like we won't lose like a single bit or magnetized weapon option off a model, but a fucking passport we can't figure out. Can't handle it.
Don't know where it is.
It's too big, I guess.
So that's it. And I think that was it. And I had a hot year, so like I won that tournament, and then that year was like the year of Manny.
Well, the year of Manny, I mean, this has been a pretty action-packed year, too. So what's been the shape of your year? Because I've interviewed you as a TO and as a winner on 40K Stats Center. We've only been at it for 6 months. And I know you've had other wins outside of that. So, like, what did the first half of your year look like?
This year has been pretty damn great. I think this has been my best year for sure. And I've had... definitely had the most wins in a single year this year. The first half of my year, straight after the LVO last year, we were basically, the Glasshammer was just starting up. We had a small little shed basically as our store with one table in it, and all our stock was crammed around this one table. So we were both crammed in there, me and Dan, on either sides of the table, making battle reports with a camera in the ceiling, and that's it. That was our whole shop. So it was a tough start to the year, but we worked hard, and I was going to events at the same time, and I rocked Tau. I used 9 broadsides, and no one was using broadsides, and I just rocked up the table with 9 broadsides.
9 broadsides and
55 drones,
and a lot of drone. I think that was interesting, because I think, unlike with Richard's list, for whatever reason, the drones have been the star from the start. But with the 9 broadsides, I don't remember a lot of chatter about how important 55 drones was to that list.
It was really, really important, because you have to realize with the Riptides, if somebody gets into you, the game is not over.
Yeah.
You can fall back, you can shoot, you've got so many things you can do. But if someone gets into a broadside unit, it's normally game over.
Yeah.
So you have to be so meticulous with the way the screen. I think if you push out far with your drone screens and like octopus leg back all the way to the 9 broadside in a little base, then people could be charging your drones 20 inches away from the broadsides, and you would still be able to overwatch because you're within 6 of them and within 36 of the enemy. So it was loads of things like that. And I think I just played because I'm a very aggressive player. I don't really play the defensive list normally at the ETC as well. I normally have the janky, hard-hitting list that goes out there and pulls out tricks here and there and gets big wins. Yeah. So I'm a really aggressive player, and using Tau was quite weird because every turn, first turn, I'd be like, advance in the middle of the board. That's where I am. Surrounded by 55 drones. And people just weren't expecting it. People would expect me to sit in the corner. And so I had a lot of success. I think I won 3 majors with Tau at the start of the year.
And I was pretty dismissive personally of those lists because I just assumed you were just nuking people. But you were actually doing stuff that I think later on Richard kind of got famous for when he started doing that stuff, like basically at Nova, when he was doing that at Warzone, and also the Atlanta Open, those places where, because Richard's at the top of it running Tau. I think similar way, just not based on the broadsides.
Yeah, of course.
I joke that it was just because you guys don't play with terrain that you could win with that list, and I think maybe that was maybe a little unfair. So where did you go with after the Tau? I guess there's the ETC triumph for you.
So at the ETC, I was using Guardsman, and me and Josh just put our heads together and tried to make the toughest list we could. And I liked the 2nd Libby Dread in the list and the 3rd Smash Captain. So that's the way we went. We had 5 Blood Angel Smash Face characters with a load of Guardsmen that could fight when they died, and triple Wyverns as well.
Yeah, it was a Castellan list.
Yeah, it was. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was sweet. Wicked. Yeah, it's because I thought about it and I was like, there are so many weapons right now that can just kill a Castellan, and he is your only hard hitter in that list. And I just thought, if I've got this many guardsmen that are good in combat, if I could put in there 4 or 5 characters that hit so hard and they can be in 4 or 5 different places on the board, they will do the Castellan's job, but in 5 places on the board.
Sure.
So that's the way I went, and I think it was one of the toughest guard builds out there this year.
But that's all good. And then round in the corner now. I mean, you must have been at the LGT, obviously. Had a good run there.
Yes. It was actually pretty funny because I have a bit of a knack for doing this, and I just turned around and I was like, guys, I've never used Eldar before, but I'm going to take Eldar planes to LGT, and everyone was like, what? And then Dan turned around to me and he was like, bro, there's only one problem. We don't own any Eldar planes. And I was like, yeah, that's fine. I'll just buy them all and build them all. So I was sitting in James, who's one of the TOs for the LGT. I was sitting in his living room while him and Dan went out for beers at the pub. And I was sitting there till 2 a.m. the night before the LGT painting these Eldar planes.
Oh, okay. Painting at least. Okay, that's good.
So that was pretty funny.
I'm sure they look beautiful.
Oh my God, you have not seen my models. My models are terrible. I am not a good painter.
Well, I got a little preview earlier of what you're bringing to the LVO. They look fairly nice. They look tidy.
They look okay, yeah, but they're mostly painted by Dan. To be fair, okay, this is quite funny. I didn't know what dry brushing was.
Right.
So
well, Dan, you're new to the hobby. A lot of these people have been doing this since they were like 10 years old, so like you got a lot to catch up on.
It was so funny. Dan built our repulsors, and we have 5 repulsors, and he was dry brushing the first one, and I was like, "What are you doing, bro?" And he was like, "I'm just dry brushing silver over the black," and I was like, that's pretty cool." And I was like, "How do you do it?" So he showed me, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool." So I sat down next to him on the second one, and I kind of like got a big blob of silver. I just dabbed it on the tissue rather than taking most of the paint off, and then started slapping it on this tank. And he turned around and he was like, "What the hell have you done?" And my tank was like half silver, half black, and he was like, "You're an idiot. You're an idiot."
Wet brushing. It's a new technique. Well, the North American Brown Magic has last year went through a hobby transformation the Army Painter. He got picked up by the Army Painter and Adam Abramowitz, and he was actually sponsored. And they did like a promo of Nick Nanavati painting his entire army.
Oh wow!
In like I think 3-day span. It was orcs too.
Oh wow!
It's a great series of videos.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could watch it. A little inspiration for you.
Wow!
It's
nice.
Good.
Yeah.
And now Nick, when we did his interview just a few hours ago, he was doing some hobby. He was painting up one of his chaplain.
Oh,
dreads.
very nice. Oh yeah, I had him on Open the Vaults yesterday, and he was on Thursday. Sorry, and he was just sitting there, and I was like, "What are you doing, Nick?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, sorry for not paying attention, guys. I'm just building the incursors for my list." I was like, yeah, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. And it was quite funny actually because he's another one, man. He's just completely switched lists, gone for the white scars.
Oh, everybody has. So we were talking about this. It's awesome. So the first round of interviews was before lists were revealed, and now, I mean, we can shift gears into it because we can talk about what you're running because it's very different than what you told the podcast land you were going to run.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah, like that's it.
Full head fake 360 was great, or a 180, I should say. It was fantastic. But like, yeah, all the top players seem to be like move, counter move, a lot of cloaks and daggers, a lot of like feints, and everyone. It's been musical chairs on armies. Everyone seems to have changed it up in that top 10. It's fantastic. What have you moved to, first of all? So just to give the people an idea, you're using a lot of Raven Guard Centurions. You were threatening to bring 24 of them. Yep. You were like Centurionception. It was a big deal is what you were going to do. And then what happened?
And then, so basically, I had two options. One was the Possessed Star, and I was having so much fun with them and a lot of success. Actually, I went to Cali and I won all my games with it on the weekend and came third. So I was really happy with the way that had come. Well, actually, I lost to Harrison 14-6, and
who also has switched to Possessed Star.
Yeah, but I came third overall, and the Possessed Bomb is so much fun, so much fun. And the build I was going to bring with it had no obliterators in, but instead I decided to put in 3 Plague Burst Crawlers, 3 bloat drones, and the -4 to hit Lord Discordant. So I was like, wow, this is way durable, and it won't win games massively, but it has play to win every game by 3 or 4 points.
Yeah.
Which is all you need to do. So I was looking at that, and then I was looking at the Centurions, and I was like, ooh, I've had more practice with the Centurions. And what I did was I had 24, but I went down to 23 to upgrade a character to a chaplain, and then I went down to 22 because it was pretty much a straight swap, just dropping 1 Assault Centurion to put in Apothecary to give all the rest of them a 6-up Feel No Pain. And I was like, that's definitely a good trade, especially when he can bring 1 back a turn. He's probably a lot better than 1 Assault Centurion. So I was going to bring 22 Assault Centurions, and for everybody watching, I then came up with an Imperial Fist list like the night before, based on Malik's list. I came up with this list, and I was like, oh my god, this is savage. So what I got Dan to do was play the 22 Centurions, and there were no Centurions left by turn 3.
So, like, you're both in your pajamas, middle of the night, like, we've got to make this work.
We live streamed the game. We live streamed the game. Did we live stream it, or was it a battle report? I think it was a battle report, actually. It's coming out this weekend, guys. That battle report is out this weekend, and you will see why I took this list. And the thinking behind it was, guys, that's what I've switched to, Imperial Fists. And it's very artillery heavy. And the reason why I switched to it was we thought it smashes hordes because I have a crap ton of shots, like a crap ton of shots. But it also smashes vehicles because I get +1 damage to all of the shots, and there are a crap ton of shots. So it's really good against horde and really good against vehicles. And I thought the one thing that would give me the most trouble will be a elite infantry army, because I won't get +1 damage and they'll have really good saves. So we thought, what's better than 22 Centurions with 2-up saves and 6-up Feel No Pains? And they just went down. They just went down so quick.
Well, I guess we'll find out because Nick Nanavetti and Nick Rose both moved to White Scars.
Yeah, I mean, they've got tricksy lists, but it's such a change, man.
Jeez Louise, so funny. I think it's great. It's fantastic. It's going to give us lots to talk about. It's going to be wonderful. So, I mean, with all of that in mind, what do you think the top 8 winds up looking like at the end? Because I think you were with me before and thinking that it would be like almost all Marines at one point. I think I heard you saying that.
I think I still am.
Yeah.
I think like 6 of the lists, because everybody's going with 3 or 4 Marines. But I think there's going to be like 6 Marine builds up there for sure. I think there'll be like personally, I think there'll be like one Eldar player of some sort, but I think it will be based purely on the fact that it will be somebody like Sean Naden who knows Eldar inside out. So it will be a player who's very skilled with Eldar that will be able to take Eldar to the top. So I think someone like that on Eldar will make the top 8. Then also we'll see someone like either Jim Vessel or TJ Lanigan, possibly even Harrison, as the one Chaos player we see up there.
Matt Morrisali. We don't want to shortchange the Aussie. There's some big hitters coming with Chaos,
That's what I
man.
mean. It's like somebody who's super skilled and is using Chaos will also make the top 8. But after that, I think there's going to be like 5 or 6 Marine players, being honest with you. Because I just think that somewhere along the way, these players that are running Eldar or Chaos will just hit a Marine build that's really good against them. Maybe not necessarily a top player, but just the army is stacked against them, and they will fall somewhere along the way.
What do you make of there's been some serious hype put behind the sort of the Psychic Awakening, Craft World Eldar shooting builds? How have they been performing in the UK? Because I'm sure you guys were hip to it as fast as it appeared. How have they been doing? Is there as much there as maybe some of the Americans think there is?
Yeah, so there are quite a few of them, but what people are doing with the Eldar at the moment is the Warlock Council. So everybody's running like a Warlock Council, and it will have like 3 Night Spinners behind it with some Shadow Weavers and stuff like that. So it's Eldar shooting, but what's in front of it is that Warlock Council.
Okay, so you haven't seen just someone going on, like, have you heard Colin Sherman talk about his builds?
No.
No? Okay. Anyway.
We've had a couple of people over here using like, for example, like 3 Warwalkers with missile launchers. Then like 3 3 Fire Prisms and 3 Falcons, and you've got those kind of lists as well.
Yeah.
And they've been doing pretty well as well. But I think at the moment, just Marines and Chaos are just dominating everything. So if you take painting points out for Cali, because it was purely on painting points, so I actually came first on gaming score, but because of painting points, I came third. So the podium would have actually looked like me in first with Chaos, then Chewy was up on the podium anyway with Chaos, and also Vic. Yeah, and also Vic dropped from 3rd to 15th because of painting penalties. So the podium was pretty much looking like Chaos.
So podium, great segue opportunity there. What are your goals, sir, coming into the LVO? I mean, you're coming a long way.
Yes, so I'm not going in with like crazy mad expectations or anything like that. But
I have said the words: when Manny Chima shows up to a tournament, he wins it. That is what I've said. So that's the bar I've set.
I would love to go top 8, bro. I would love to go top 8, and I'm aiming for top 8, and then after that, just doing as well as I can. But I have known to be slightly lucky. So
what character is that guy called? I believe he's got a name. I believe he has a name.
It's just like I don't know, man. I
think it's Jamie Manny. Manny.
Jamie Manny is Jamie Manny is a thing, right? He comes out quite a bit, and for example, at the LGT, 3 of my 5 games, because I was using Eldar planes, were like whoever goes first wins, and I just went first in every single game at the LGT, all 5.
I do.
Just went first. So maybe, if I could do it in 5 games, could do it in 9.
Why not? Roll 5. I literally said. I roll fire. I literally said in the last interview and all kinds of times. I think if there was a year where someone could just go first 9 times and win, maybe this is it.
Yeah. So the way that I've built the list is based on the terrain. So I'm really hoping that the terrain looks like the maps that have come out. Yeah. Because those hills they're not very thick. They're like 2 inches thick or something, but they're like 4 inches tall and 10 to 14 inches wide.
Yeah.
Now, 3 Whirlwind Scorpius can quite easily hide behind one of those hills. And those hills are in every single deployment zone.
Yep. Once you get to the top 100, yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
So I think with gun lines going second, I can still give them a game, which is what I like, because load of Marine games right now are whoever goes first. But I think going second, I can still give those kind of gun lines a game because they won't be able to see too much turn one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also, I think, and this is a pretty bold statement, and I not being cocky or anything like that, nothing to do with me or my player skill.
This is safe. This is a safe place. No one's going to hear it.
But yeah, like I say, it's nothing to do with the way that I play, just the way that this list is built. I think if it goes first against anything at the moment, there is no chance.
Okay, so let's assume one person goes first against you at the LVO. Someone who's not yourself. Who do you think has the best chance to win the LVO?
Who do you think has the best chance to win the LVO? So, you know what? I actually think it's going to be player based. So, I have three that I would like to pick. So, I think Sean Naden, if it's an Eldar player, because he's right up there. And then personally, I think TJ. Ooh. If it's going to be a chaos player, I think TJ, just because he has mad practice with that list, and I've been talking to him a lot about it, and he's ready. So I think maybe him. And I think if it's going to be a Marine build, I'm actually going to pick someone that I don't think anyone's really picked yet, and I think it's going to be Malik.
Malik.
If it's not me, I think it's going to be Malik.
There it is. Good call. So it's going to be fun, and I think, the players will take it. The skill will win it, and it's going to be great. Do you have anything before we let you go that you would like to plug? I suspect you might.
Oh, yeah, for sure. So, guys, I'm from Glasshammer Gaming, of course, and while I'm out there, I'll be running a masterclass the day before the actual main event. It's on Thursday, and it is at 2 p.m., we already have 8 people signed up for it, and it should be pretty cool. We're going to be going over literally the best lists that are going and what we can do to get points from them. I think that's the main thing that people will want to know. Right.
And what time is it? Because it's a bit of a what time is it at?
It's at 2 p.m. So I'm not quite sure where it is at the moment, what room it is. I'm assuming I'll find that out once I get there because, of course, like Reese and Frankie are super busy. But it will be at 2 p.m. on the Thursday. And yeah, guys, come along and check it out. It's not ridiculous. It's I've put it at $50 because it's my first one. So I would maybe just like to have 10 people there. So if there's two more awesome people out there that would like to come along and find out how to get more points against top metalists, come and check it out.
Thank you so much for your time today. It's been a lot of fun talking to you, and best of luck out there. I know we'll get you on stream for a few interviews over the course of the weekend.
Oh, awesome. Thanks, bro. Thank you very much for having me on. It's been awesome. It's always fun having a chat.
Tournament news.
Hi guys, I'm Manny Chima, one of the founders of Glasshammer Gaming and the head coach for the Glasshammer list writing and coaching service, and you're listening to the 40K Stats Center.
Ooh, fresh off the heels of that interview, we've got a real stunner for you here. I think this is one of Pete's favorite players out there. The one, the only Matt Morrisali. Pete, what inspires your passion for this gentleman?
I mean, the guy is an extremely good player, arguably the greatest in Australia. He was number 1 last year. He puts up consistent results, frequently at the top table. If you look over at Down Under Pairings and you go to the stats sheets that they've created, which, by the way, guys, absolutely fantastic job. And you look at his record, it's absolutely absurd. They've collected data for several years of play for this guy, and he's got like a 90% win rate. Whether he goes first or second, it doesn't matter. He just wrecks his opponents. His average victory points per game are over the moon. The guy's just awesome. And then when you talk to him, he's hilarious. He's the absolute troll of my heart and my dreams. Just a great guy all around. And unfortunately, because of this global giant world that we live in, not a lot of people talk about him. Talk about this fantastic player that we have in this 40K community, and I think we really need to start thinking about it. Like him, Eric Lathuris, there's a whole crew down there that are just absolutely bonkers crazy good at this game that we kind of ignore because of where they are.
Yeah, and luckily they've got a good chip on their shoulder about that, and they've developed a few ways to get the word out, and Stats Center exists to shine a light where it otherwise would not shine. So Matt Morsali, in contrast to the two gentlemen we've heard from already, he's stuck to his guns. And maybe this is where we shift in the podcast from two guys who are trying to be as cutting edge as possible to two guys who are just sticking with what got them here. What do you think about that approach? And especially with the list that Matt's got.
Well, when you think about how what I said earlier about this concept of if you're not able to get in the games to like flip your list on the drop of the hat against like top players consistently, it does make sense that you want to stick to something you know. But on top of that, sometimes what you know is actually like amazing regardless. One thing I'll say about Morsoli is a lot of people, and even himself, would sometimes say like that he was running a Jim Vessel style list, although in his terms it was more because he did it first. But he's always played it differently. He was way more into Zangor and Bloodletter bombs than the Vessel style lists. But Jim would often run one. Morsoli's frequently running 2 or 3 bombs in his lists, just so that he can keep up that pressure and just to overwhelm his opponents. And he's a crafty guy. His summoning is always hilarious. I mean, there was a whole meme about it in one event where he summoned a Plague Hulk when he went up against Deathwatch, which was just a really poor matchup for him at the time. So yeah, like I'm really curious to see how well he does. I think he is at least 5-1 capable, and he's like that dark horse pick for me. Like if someone's going to get top 8 that no one expects, it's going to be Matt Morsoli.
Well, you couldn't have a better intro than that. Let's go to the interview. You, sir, Matt Morsali, come very highly regarded, especially by the person who I depend on for all of my Warhammer-related opinions, Peter the Falcon Calissimo. And he says that you're a man of greatness. And I also know you because you won a badass prize last year, which is a free ride to the LVO. Am I right?
I said I won that last year, and I've just been looking forward to it via the entire season.
And what did you win the free ride to the LVO for? What did you have to achieve in order to get that golden ticket?
That was first place in the South Pacific, Australia. It's essentially the Australian ITC. It does include a few Southeast Asian countries and New Zealand as well, but they don't really have the volume of events for a winner to come from those regions. So it's essentially the Australian ITC.
All right, cool. So you're a big deal then.
Oh, sure. It's look, coming from someone who listens to a lot of the US coverage of the ITC, the climate is very different. In Australia, we don't have super majors. We have one big event per year. And it really comes down to who can travel to the biggest events.
Right.
The sort of the 3 or 4 guys who are in the mix for all the guys who are able to travel to the big events. Because when we're talking, some of them are the shortest flight I can take is a 2.5, 3 hour flight, which is 10 hours driving.
Yeah.
12 hours driving to the nearest big city. It really just comes down to who can travel, and a lot of great players, work doesn't permit that multiple times per year and all that sort of thing. And I know, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but over in the States, you can sort of just drive, 90 minutes, 2 hours a lot of the time and get to, decent sized events every week.
Well, yeah, decent sized events, sure. But I mean, like the real big ones. So your Novas, Chicago is where Adepticon is, Las Vegas for the LVO. I mean, these places are not close together. So they are pretty spread out. You're hopping on a plane in most cases for those. But that's all right. Canada faces this problem too, and a lot of places it's hard to get to events. So that being said, how is it possible that you got the bug to be a competitive Warhammer 40K player? Where does that come from? Where did your competitive part of your Warhammer start?
When I was about 17, 18, I really started getting into it. When I was a little bit younger than that, so sort of 15, 16 was when 5th edition came out. And I started playing Dark Eldar, and that was quite a competitive rule set back then. I went to, I've been going to tournaments for a little bit, but just sort of little ones, here and there. We've got a few big hobby events that everyone used to paint armies up for, but they weren't really competitive tournaments. And my good friend Josh Diffie from down at the network at the time was living in a share house.
In a what kind of house?
A share house. What do you call it? Just like a group house. I don't know. Do you have a different word for that over there?
No, I thought you said shit house. I was like, what's the shit house?
No, that's not true. But they were right into competitive 40K as well, and they both sort of burst onto the scene and brought a lot of this competitive nature, and they were running events out of a local game store and stuff, and they really brought competitive 40K to the area that I live in.
And what era was this? Was this like late 7th? Was this like then, or even earlier than that?
This is like early to mid 5th.
Oh wow!
So
Okay.
we're a little while back here, and I was sort of lucky enough to get an invite into what the old gaming club they put together, which was called the Hammer House, because they played Warhammer at their house.
Fitting.
And there was sort of 6 to 10 of us at that time, and that's when we really started putting in like proper high-level practice, the sort of practice you don't get when you're playing pickup games at your local game store. It's 4 people standing around a table, really dissecting the game and the matchup and working towards optimal play.
Yeah.
And from there, that sort of thing has just followed me through. So they ended up moving, and that Hammer House moved, and we did the same thing there all through a lot of 6th. And that sort of broke apart, and then the new guard have come in, and we still have the same sort of dynamic going on. But it's just about getting the models on the table and surrounding yourself with really good players, and then working towards optimal play. And that's just figuring out, getting every little ounce of efficiency out of every unit you can get, even if your army is not the best top tier meta army, is really what gets me excited.
Yeah.
And that's really what pushed me to play. I've played some meta lists, and I've played some off the wall lists, but I love playing just these slightly off meta things that have got tricks and like really cool ways of doing things.
Yeah.
And just pushing to get everything out of it. And that's really where my competitive drive comes from.
So I've got to ask here, because previous to 8th edition, the only thing I really knew of the Australian meta was a thing called community comp, and it was an effort. Did you like? This does not sound like the same world you were living in at this Hammer House. Like, so how did you guys fit in? Because did you guys have a very conservative meta, like as far as competitive scene was concerned, or were there like ITC style tournaments or ETC style tournaments taking place that like actual competitive players would enjoy, or did you like the competitive comp thing?
So funny you should mention that. Community comp was actually built out of the second Hammer House. So Mount Antonello actually pioneered that.
Oh, nice.
And a lot of us were actually there on the night where this sort of inception of this idea came about. And what it really was, we have a very big sort of hobby-centric community, and we were struggling to get people to come. We had comped events and no comped events back then. That's just how things were. You got a comp score, or you played, with no comp, and no comp was on the nose for a lot of people.
Yeah.
This was sort of the attempt to standardize that, so you could again get the take some interesting unit combinations. So rather than taking, in today's meta, your 3 Thunderfire cannons, your repulsor, your 6 planes, you'd play something a little bit less efficient. You'd play, you might have, a dev squad and some dreadnoughts and bits and pieces, and it would kind of function the same way. You'd have a shooting base, you have a couple of power characters in there, but instead of having the most efficient of everything, you'd end up just playing with a more balanced out level of that.
Mm-hmm.
And that sort of the concepts still apply. Like, it's still trying to get the most out of those units. So I actually quite enjoyed it when it was, in full swing. But at the same time, we have ATC, which isn't the same as the American ATC. It's more like the ETC, where every state puts a team together.
Right.
And we'd always be building towards that, and we'd be, trying to break down the best possible list for that. So I found the mix used to be really, really good.
That was the ETC format using ETC FAQ at the time, I assume.
Yeah, so our ATC always uses the current ETC mission pack at list sub, and it's traditionally a month or so before the ETC, or a little bit more than that. Ever since we were putting teams together that weren't particularly ETC competitive back in the day, but we were still using the same mission format, just so those guys could get
practice
the reps in against other people who are doing their best to win, and actually getting those high level practice games in for those guys. But it was the pinnacle of competitive 40K in Australia for quite a long time.
Yeah, it's a cool tournament. I love following that when it's happening. Actually, the ATC, to be honest with you, is awesome. I like the idea of because like in North America, there's the club championship. Like there's ATC, and then you'll have other sort of club style team tournaments, and I think it'd be amazing to have sort of like a sub-national, like states and provinces type throwdown. That'd be sweet.
Right, you meet the best people that way, and that's how that's essentially how our ETC team in 2019 became so strong.
Yeah,
it's because people met each other through these repeated, like you play against the best players in every state once a year, and you form really cool friendships, and you expand that group of people that you have working on the best possible lists to other local metas. It brings it all together, and it helps make your competitive community really strong.
Yeah. So for yourself, then, what was your first big? It could be individual accolade that you bagged as a competitive 40K player. When you look back, what would be like that first symbolic trophy on the shelf for yourself?
Look, it probably depends on how you look at it. So I won a couple of small RTTs back when I was quite young and wasn't really sort of like I wasn't really aware of what all competitive 40K had to offer.
Mm-hmm.
During 5th and 6th, I said I won a few GTs. I won a couple of invitational events that were quite big. So Josh, who I mentioned earlier, used to run these events at the local game store, and he'd just invite the best players.
Yeah.
So for me, winning one of those was probably my first real taste of, okay, I can actually compete with the best players around, and that's probably what drove me on further. I won Arcanicon 40K one year, which is not the most competitive event for those who know it, but it's the biggest. Well, at the time, it was the biggest event. It would have been almost 200 players.
That's a big deal. That's still a big tournament.
Yeah, that format's a bit funny, but look, in recent memory, winning WinterCon when we had probably the strongest top field, so earlier this year, was probably the big one for this season. But look, because I've been playing for so long, it's hard to really pinpoint one or even a couple of events that are really the ones. But winning that first invitational event, I can't even remember what it was called, to be honest, is probably what really pushed me to keep going and to improve and to want to play more.
I'm the same way. It's hard for me to pick the GT win. For me, means the most out of none of them that I've won. Aside from that, what is your favorite faction? If you had your druthers, what would you be playing?
I play Chaos, man. I love it. I've dabbled in a lot of other armies, and I said Dark Eldar were kind of my first love. But ever since, going back to the ATC days, Josh Diffie also plays Chaos, and back when he was playing, he'd always get it because he was a better player than I was back then. And as soon as I've sort of stepped into that role, it's all I want to play. I love the aesthetic of the army. I love the way that it plays. I think the models are super cool. And just being the bad guy is fun.
Coming into the LVO, you're probably pretty high up in the general ranks. But what was the shape of your year? How did it progress for you?
I believe I'm sitting at about 20th or 21st at the moment, which is unfortunately kind of as high as you can go without the super majors. But look, I'm pretty happy with that. Really, look, with last year, so in August of 2019, we sent Australia's most successful ETC team over to Serbia.
Yep.
And the majority of my year up to then was just focused on that. So I wasn't playing as much ITC, and if I was going for the season win, that's what I would have been doing. But really, it was just about putting our best foot forward to try and get a good result, because we weren't sure if we were going to go again. We weren't sure if we were going to send what we were essentially calling the dream team again.
Mm-hmm.
So the start of the year was it was just full of ETC practice events. I wasn't playing a whole heap of ITC. I won, like I said, quite a few local events, just little GTs and like RTTs here and there. Getting the WinterCon win was really, really big, especially because I beat an ETC teammate on the top table literally the week before we headed over there. It was a good win to get because it really put me in the right winning, confident mindset going into ETC.
Yeah.
Since then, I've won a tournament called Moab in Sydney, which is 60 odd players. I don't remember the exact number they ended up getting, but I would actually say ITC wise, it's been a relatively quiet season compared to the 2019 season that I won for South Pacific.
Okay, so coming into the LVO now, why don't we move over to that? What are you playing? Lists have been submitted. We don't have to be so cagey now. What are you playing at the LVO, sir?
So I'm playing a very similar list to what I've been playing all year. I haven't dropped the Plague Bearers. I've kept the Plague Bearers. I've kept the Thousand Suns, and I've just replaced the extra demons I was running before with some Night Lords. Just a little bit of tech. A few little bits and pieces. I don't think the Bloodletters are good enough to be in the list anymore, so they've come out, and I've replaced them with a couple of characters that are going to try and do the same sort of job and project some damage. But really, like if you look at it, it looks like a list from a couple of months ago, and I'm not sure if I'm taking too big of a gamble here and sticking with the the plague bearers and the smites and all that sort of thing. I guess it's going to remain to be seen if my year or so playing that list and all the reps I've got in on it is going to be enough to hold up against the Marines.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not a whole heap has changed, honestly.
Everyone who's in that top 10 has probably changed armies twice, like in the last 2 weeks. Like they've all like been rumored to be playing something different than they were playing originally, except for maybe TJ. And then was rumored to be playing something else, and now they've submitted like a completely different list from that. So like you are sticking to your guns. Why? What makes you feel like that's the right choice rather than making some sort of meta call?
I'm a pretty keen believer that faction mastery is key. We saw when we were at ETC, our best performing players like Liam and myself were both playing armies that we've been playing for a year. And just the ability to dig yourself out of bad situations because you've been in that matchup 100 times is so important. And I felt like if I switch, I had someone offered me to borrow their Marine army, which was exactly what I would have played had I played Marines.
Yeah.
And I played a couple of games with it. I was giving other people a hand testing out their lists, playing into those lists, and I was winning games with them. But I just felt like I didn't have the flexibility and the cunning to play that list the way that I'll play the Chaos list.
Yeah.
And I think that sticking to your guns sometimes and playing what you know, and I feel like having played this army for most of the 2018 season and all of the 2019 season is probably going to give me the best chance of doing well.
Wow. Okay, fantastic. I mean, you and Jim. I mean, although Jim did switch out, I think he's still doing the possess bomb, but
we'll see how that goes for him. I do like the tricks it's got.
Yeah.
We're having a chat about it the other day, but I don't know. We'll see if he can make it work for himself.
What are your goals then coming into the LVO?
Everyone wants to win. I don't think I'm going to win. I don't even think I'm going to make top 8, to be honest. But that is the goal. I'll be pretty happy with 5-1. It's my first time playing in America. It's my first time playing an event that's over 200 people. Like the ESC got just over 200 people, but that's in a format that I'm very familiar with. So it'll be interesting to see how we go. But 5-1, I'd be happy with. Making the top 8 would be great, and I'd be stoked on it. But I do sort of have the feeling that I'm going to play one too many Space Marine players and have a few things go wrong. And this army is very susceptible to having a bad psychic phase and falling over, and not having such a great time on the back end of the game.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, you've been testing against some of the monsters of the meta, right? Like, it's not like you're just hoping for the best here.
Oh, I'm so sick of playing against Space Marines, to be honest. Just yesterday I played 4 or 5 games. LVO lists actually came out halfway through the day, so we pivoted from what we were playing, and I tested against a few of the other top players' lists. Did do pretty well, so I'm not sure that the guys I was playing would have played it quite as well as the other blokes would have, but it's definitely got the guts to give them a game, and I think that it looks like it doesn't on paper, but once you sort of see a few of the things that the new tech can do, it'll definitely give some Marine lists a really good game.
What then are your predictions for the top 8?
Look, I think you can't deny that Space Marines or Blood Angels are going to get in there. I think you're probably looking at 3 or 4 Space Marine lists. I think a Blood Angels list that has Death Company is going to go first 6 times, and it's going to make it into the top 8.
Huh, okay.
I actually haven't looked through how many of them there are, so maybe there aren't enough Blood Angels armies to do that. But
there are quite a Blood Angels are the biggest Astartes non-Marines list, if that made any sense, how I said that. But you know what I mean.
Yeah, I have a very good Blood Angels player in my area who I play against a little bit, and knowing what the Death Company do when they go first, if you're not prepared for it, or even if you are sometimes, I feel like, there's a very real possibility that Death Company go first, even 5 games, and just, brute force wins.
Yeah.
And beat players they have no business beating because the Death Company went first and killed everything. I don't know. There are a lot of good Blood Angels players. I know that there are I've seen them on various streams and here and there, and I think that a lot of people have put their Blood Angels away because they were quite competitive in would have been 5th or 6th as well. So people have got Blood Angels armies hanging around. It's like the Space Marine problem. I think one of them will get in for sure. I think a Chaos player will make it, whether it's myself, Jim, or TJ, or I don't know. Mark Perry's list looks pretty interesting, so maybe that one will get all the way in.
Yeah.
And yeah, look, I think it's hard to bet against Sean Naden given his record as well. I've got no idea what he's doing with that army, but he'll probably pull some Sean Naden magic and find himself a spot in there.
Yeah.
Is that 8? Is that 3, 4, 5, 6? Oh yeah, probably one more Marine player. Then that was only 7 lists. So 4 Marines, Blood Angels, Chaos, Eldar. That's still only 7. I don't know. Okay. The last one will be something off the wall. I reckon it'll be a list that has no business being in the top 8.
You think the great Marine filter won't get rid of that guy? Eh? He'll still be able to weasel his way through the ghost round.
I think a lot of the Space Marine players on that guy's way to the top 8 are going to be substandard players playing with a really good list. Not meaning any offense to anyone, but just players who are less experienced piloting a very strong list, and that there are lists with jank that'll beat them.
Yeah.
And that guy will find himself in the shadow round and, get a good matchup in the shadow round, you're in the top 8.
And just hosting Stat Center and talking to people all the time, in the last couple months, there have been a number of guys who've been like, yeah, so just dusted off the old Warhammer toys like last week, and I just wanted something straightforward, and I won the GT. It can just happen when you have it. So we'll see. I've been joking about this.
We have that happen a lot over here. We have, again, I was talking about the old competitive scene from back in 5th and 6th ed, and these guys still rear their heads every now and then. And there are some really good players who aren't playing tournaments that just turn up with whatever they've got on their shelf and go, 4-1, 5-1, and really give the new guys a real challenging game.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be surprised to see someone turn up like that and just pull an army out that they've got and realize it's got some cool new rules and actually do really well. Or the converse of that is that you have someone who's really, really good and they bring an interesting list, like Andrew Gogno's sister's list that was on Art of War this week.
Yeah.
We have a local player playing something very similar to that, and they're doing really well as well. So there's all sorts of little, tricky Imperium lists or even other Chaos lists that can really give Marines a good game. And you only need to have one good matchup once you make it to that shadow round and you're in the top 8.
Before we wrap it all up, this is the big question we've been asking everybody. Other than yourself, who is your pick to win the LVO?
Before I saw lists, I would have said Nick Nanavati.
Oh, burn!
Oh no, I don't mean any disrespect to him. But I think the move to White Scars is a mistake. I thoroughly rate Manny Chima's list, and I think he's if I had to pick, I think Manny Chima would win.
I'm gonna have to compile the top players' top picks after this because I feel like Manny is maybe the favorite from the players we've pulled.
I just don't want to. I don't want to lose to him, so I'm just hoping that I jinx him along with everyone else saying that he's going to win, and he unfortunately, knocks himself out early on. So sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, we'll see. I believe he said something like, "If I go first, there's no way I can lose." Something like that. I don't know. It was a pretty bold boast in his interview. You'll hear it when you listen to this one.
I bet his list yesterday, and I went second.
Okay. There you go. Little chin music. All right. So before we let you go, my friend, is there anything you'd like to tell the people? Anything you want to plug? Anything you'd like to say before we kick things off?
Look, not personally, but I will give a big shout out to the guys at Down Under Network who are now streaming with Art of War starting next year. So Josh and Adam over there. I know Adam will be joining you for your stream next week. I can't wait to catch up with them over there. But they're going to be putting out some really cool content under the Art of War banner, along with the other guys over in the States who are doing that. So they're a good group of lads, and they deserve your Twitch, your sub or your follow or whatever the free one is. Just even that one,
the Prime one, Amazon Prime.
Give them a Prime sub, and go show them some love, because I do think that everyone keeps their eyes on the US meta, but there are some really amazing Australian players, as we showed at ETC this year, and you can get just as much out of watching a stream from one of our events as you can when there's no US event on that weekend and you want to watch a bit of content. So give them a look, give them a follow, and maybe you'll see the next best Australian player playing on there one day, because they don't get the same volume of views and stuff as the American events do, but there are some very good players there.
Hey, I think that's mostly a function of time zones, because certainly the quality of coverage and the quality of play is definitely there. So don't feel like the world doesn't respect you. And one of the coolest things about doing Stat Center has been able to talk to people and the best players from all around the world, in Australia especially. You guys have got a lot of cool, fun stuff going on down there, so lots to be proud of. And I get to hang out with Adam for like 3 days. And I get to meet you. It's going to be great. We'll get you on the stream, do a little interview after you destroy Manny Chima going second. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely no disrespect by that at all. Manny's a very good player. I'm sure he'll play it much better than the bloke I played yesterday did.
I tell you, every single person I've talked to, and you guys are all really, really good at this game, have been wonderful humans, and they've all been wonderful chats, and it's going to be nothing but collegial competition out there, I'm sure. So you can talk as much fake shit as you want about Manny Chima. He won't be mad. He'll be dressed like Batman, though, so he takes himself very seriously, just so you know.
That's incredible. As long as he wraps an Australian flag, around his neck as a cape when I beat him, we're all good.
Perfect. You might have to supply it, but I'm sure he'd oblige.
I've got one, mate. I've got one ready to go.
Tournament news.
It's Diff
and Adam from
The Art of War Down Under
and Down Under Pairings, where we deliver tournament coverage so fresh,
it's in the future.
And you're listening to 40K Stats Center.
And now we come to our 8th and final interview of the 40K Stats Center Grim and Dark in Las Vegas series. Of course, it would not be complete with at least one champion, the reigning champion of the ITC and the LVO, none other than the hometown hero, former hometown hero to Frontline Gaming, Brandon Grant. Pete, how excited are you here from the champ?
I don't think I could get more excited. Brandon Grant is the pinnacle of interviews. The man is so concise. His answers are so well thought out and yet so fast. It's almost as if he is some kind of robot. Unfortunately, though, this year, Brandon's kind of taken a year off from the event. I mean, the guy did get married, so that kind of does put a damper on things. But, I mean, look at Pamprine. Pamprine got married, and he didn't take a year off. He sucked at a bunch of events and clocked out, but he's still, 10th in ITC? Regardless, Brandon did go to about 7 events this year. He hasn't won anything. He did come in second at Slaughterfest, which is a big deal. That was a very stacked event. But I think the big story for Brandon has been that he has stuck to his guns and he's been playing mono guard since the death of the Castellan. And that's something that very few other players, especially of his caliber, can say, that he has stuck to a uniformly underperforming faction in guard with that Castellan nerf and still managed to consistently top table and just be a force that everyone is afraid of. When you talk to anybody at SoCal or at BAO or any other event, no one wants to play Brandon Grant because the man is a genius and he just, like I said earlier, he thinks of things at a higher level than most.
And I think, too, he wanted to lean on an army that he not only is passionate about, but knows very well. What do you think of the list, though, that he's bringing? Because obviously Brandon and I talk about it, but I thought it was super cool. What do you think about it?
I mean, it's a list. It's a guard. I think it's the best iteration of a guard list that you can currently make. The Demolisher Cannon tanks do work, especially against Marines, which is something that you need to be worried about. Of course, with them being 27% of the meta. And yeah, his move to kind of adding a little bit of Talarn, a little bit of other tricks, they'll do him justice. They'll do him well. Whether he can compete at an event with 27% of the lists being Marines, but not just that, but of those 27, the majority of that top, say 25, the guys that are expected to hit that top 8, playing that faction, I think he's going to have a rough road. If anyone can do it, it's him, but it's going to be a rough trek.
All right. Well, we know that if anything, Brandon is going into this with eyes wide open, and he's going to take it one game at a time. The Bill Belichick of competitive 40K. Here he is, Brandon Grant. What was the moment you got into specifically competitive 40K? Because it is a bit of a different thing than just Warhammer in general. What hooked you into the comp scene?
I did a lot of RTTs and Garage Hammer before getting into competitive. So I played for years, super casually. And then the first competitive event I went to was actually the LVO 2015. And after that, I was hooked. The level of gameplay at that LVO, there were people there that I played. I'd never seen them play the game that way before. And it revolutionized how I think about playing competitive 40K.
What do you think it is about comp 40K specifically? Because, I mean, you know, you're a grown-up dude with good professional income. You could have lots of different hobbies and interests. What is it about this one that really captures your imagination?
40K has lots of things to like, and just about anything other than painting gets me into this game. Painting is a chore, but modeling, putting nice-looking armies in pleasing arrangements on the table, playing a deep strategy game, the banter at the table, all of that's really, really great. So I'd say what keeps me coming back is the level of complexity, and actually the randomness actually comes into play quite a bit. So I feel like if I was to be a professional chess player, I would just be doing a lot of memorization of what are the correct moves and what to do when. But all the outcomes, the only uncertainty is what move my opponent will make, not when my opponent makes a move, what will the outcome be. So 40K has that random chance element, and I think when it's done right, it forces you to reassess, and it ensures that it helps to ensure that there's no one strategy that is unbeatable in this game.
Yeah, and hey, there's something about humans and random outcomes, right? We, as monkeys, we seem to really get a kick out of unlikely things happening when we want them to happen. You know, Vegas exists for a reason. A football has 2 pointy ends.
Ironically, I will say I do not like gambling in Vegas. Every time I've tried it, I've hated it.
My favorite perverse pleasure about the LVO being in Vegas is everyone is always like, "Oh, going to Vegas, eh? Oh, going to Vegas. What happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, eh, bud?" I'm like, yeah, man. And we're doing like the most innocent thing in Vegas that has ever happened. So it's fantastic. On the weekend of the AVN Awards, no less.
And we're putting it on the internet, so.
We're cam girls in our own way. All right, so what's your year been like? Last year, of course, one of the greatest finishes in the young history of the ITC. Obviously, in epic fashion versus Alex Harrison at the LVO. You bag both the ITC crown and the LVO championship. And then what happened? What does your 2019 season year look like?
One of the reasons I did so well is I'm kind of a mono faction player, and that faction has been Imperial Guard for years. So I'm extremely good at that one army. And at LVO 2019, that one army was top tier. So it was competitive. I could take it to the highest levels of competitive play and it would do well. This year, that's no longer the case after about, August of this year. So it's a lot more of a struggle. But that's been part of my year, is dealing with an army that has slid a little bit from its top slot.
I don't want to be ignorant here, but you weren't playing mono faction Guard last year.
I was not, but Guard is the one army I understand the best.
Got it.
And every army I've played in 8th edition has had a very heavy Guard influence.
Okay.
So I've been playing mono Guard before the Castellan, and now I'm playing mono Guard after the Castellan.
Right.
But I also got married this year. So that was a lot of work.
Yep.
Not really for me compared to my wife, but it took a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And married life is good, but we'll see what 2020 holds for me. But 2019, I slowed down a little bit, didn't travel to quite as many faraway events, and kept things more local. But yeah, I mean, my philosophy is always to play as well as I possibly can at the table.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily translate into me always buying the latest and greatest or pursuing the latest and greatest strategies. In fact, I'm probably slow on the uptake to figure out what the latest and greatest meta is. But once I've got those models on the table, that's what my focus is on, is, okay, I have these pieces. How do I play with them the best I can possibly do?
Even still, I mean, you've had some great finishes this year. You had an awesome rally back at the SoCal Open. I think you went 5-1 the hard way. Which was cool to see. I think it's obviously been a tumultuous but good season for you. Now, why? I mean, obviously you've said you're most comfortable with Guard. You really like Guard. all that kind of stuff. But, why? What is it that makes you want to stay true to that faction? Because we talked to, by the way, a couple of guys, TJ Lanigan, Jim Vessel, they have held true. They're not turning their backs on Chaos. Matt Morsoli, not going to leave Chaos. They are dyed-in-the-wool Chaos fans. They're not doing it. Meanwhile, other guys in this series, they've changed armies maybe 2-3 times in the last month. Getting ready, trying to make this decision, make their meta call. What is it about sticking with your horse that why do you do that? What makes you want to do that?
I still have fluff bunny tendencies, and if you're going to play 40K and not get into the role-playing aspect or the background aspect a little bit, then I don't think you're playing 40K for the full reasons you could be.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, the background of Guard really appeals to me. Number one. Number two, I really love military history, and it's easy to translate that into Imperial Guard very easily. So yeah, I like armies that have sort of a human drama element to them. Number one. Number two, the play style of Guard really suits me. It's very easy to make a Guard style army list that says, if we just sit in our deployment zones, then I'm going to take this game. So it's up to you to try and figure out how to change that. And the army I'm running now is more of a hybrid, just because 40K is so varied. Even though Guard traditionally does that, there's plenty of armies nowadays that are like, actually, if you stay in your deployment zone, I will win.
Right.
So it's still sort of a hybrid in terms of sometimes I have to go forward, sometimes I have to hold back. And I've found that if I can identify correctly what I should be doing in terms of being aggressive or defensive, that I tend to do very well. But there are always exceptions. Like one of my latest games at Dice Hammer was Iron Hands Flyer Spam with a Repulsor Executioner with the Iron Stone and the new Baby Carriers on Planet Bowling Ball. There was one piece of line of sight blocking terrain, and with 8 inches of movement, at least on all of the Iron Hands models, they could always see around it after their movement phase.
Right.
So going second into that was an exercise in futility.
Right.
But, other than that, usually if the terrain permits, I can make it a game.
Yes.
But as long as I know, okay, this is what I need to be doing in order to win, and I can plan it out, I feel very confident in my ability to pull off some ridiculous games, as was evident at LVO last year.
So LVO, good segue. It's you're getting good at this podcasting business. What do you think of the LVO meta? Because I've been mentioning this to a lot of people. Like, you're staying still while the world kind of moves a bit around you. As you're trying to make the guess at what the meta is really going to shape up to be specifically for the LVO, do you find it kind of interesting that there isn't a lot of events giving a hint at it coming into it? It's kind of a blind corner in that way.
I do find that interesting, but there's a few things that I definitely expect. For one of them, I expect that horde armies, like hordes of cultists, plague bearers, guardsmen, those armies are not very popular anymore just because Thunderfire cannons exist, and if you're trying to move your infantry horde across the board, the Space Marine player spends 3 CP and none of your infantry units move.
Right.
So that is definitely less prevalent. So, for example, a friend of mine, Jeff Poole, plays Orcs. He had 3 squads of boys start on the board, all squads of 30. One of them got deleted. The other 2 got slowed. So even with the jump, he can't get into combat.
Yeah.
And then rinse and repeat. So he basically never had to leave his deployment zone, which is insane. So yeah, I don't expect horde meta at all. Or I expect it to be a spoiler list or a gatekeeper list where you might face it in rounds 1, 2, or 3. But you're not going to face it 4, 5, 6. On top of that, I think that invulnerable saves are king. I'm going to see a lot of armies with invulnerable saves that are quite strong, just because there's a lot of AP2 and there's a lot of AP4 and 5.
Yeah.
Thanks to Space
Crazy
Marines.
amounts of AP now. Yeah, because of all the stacked AP modifiers. Yeah,
Yep.
on Space Marines.
I also expect to see lots of AP4 and 5 character dreadnoughts, especially the Chaplain dreadnought, because it got a points reduction and is BS2. I mean, talk about unnecessary point changes, but moving on. So what I expect to see in this meta, I expect to see Eldari flyer spam with the plus damage, craft world, flying around. So you get something like 8 or 9 flyers, maybe some night spinners, maybe some wave serpents. I don't know, just an extremely resilient vehicle army that can hit Space Marines really hard. I expect chaos lists with plenty of invulns and plenty of psychics so that you can just smite those damn Ironstone buffed Iron Hands out of the sky because can't dodge smite, no save on smite. So Centurions, they don't like smite. I also expect melee-based fast Space Marines to be a thing, particularly White Scars with their advance and charge. For one thing, they can ambush and then reliably get into combat, so the Thunderfire Cannon doesn't affect them. And number two, they hit like a truck.
So were you aware of the Nick Nanavati pivot to White Scars?
Yeah, I am aware of that. Yeah. And I think that in a Marine meta, if you're thinking of a, what do you call it, a mirror match, where you're Space Marines, they're Space Marines, I think the melee Space Marines beat the shooty Space Marines.
Fascinating.
So for me, I'm less afraid of the melee Space Marines. I have a lot of bodies, and I can screen for 2 or 3 turns against that list. But the shooty Marines list gives me fits, because as long as there's not enough line of sight blocking terrain, they're going to take half my army off the board each turn. Like, no joke.
What are you specifically bringing to the LVO? Now that lists are out, everything's revealed, you can speak more freely than our first episode. So what are you bringing?
Okay, easy. So knowing what the opposition's going to look like, I know that terrain's going to be very important, but based on my experience, only 1 or 2 pieces of terrain will be able to hide maybe 1 or 2 vehicles. But I need more than 1 or 2 vehicles of firepower if I'm going to try and keep up with some of these armies. So that
don't mean to interrupt you. Manny Chima was very he pivoted like last second when he saw what the permanent what the standardized tables were going to be. So he moved to all Imperial Fist like artillery with 3 Whirlwind Scorpius because he thinks he can hide those things no problem behind the 4-inch walls on the standardized table. I don't know if you caught those.
I think that he can hide 2 of them. And I think you can hide all the Thunderfire cannons because those things are small. But 3 of them, I believe 1 of them will always be able to be visible.
Right.
And I think that's a great pivot on his part, just because there's going to be a lot of cover providing terrain, and Imperial Fists are going to ignore it. But he's still going to want melee answers if he's going to go mass artillery, because that's the counter to the Space Marine meta right now, is a melee-based Marine army is going to give you fits. Especially if you have trouble slowing them because they're Raven Guard or White Scars and just appear and take you down.
And I interrupted you. You were talking about being able to hide artillery and having trouble with that. That's why I said
so.
That.
First of all, Basilisks are the one piece of artillery that actually participates in the Marine meta. Wyverns do nothing to Space Marines. So those are good. I'm taking 2 of them. I'm taking the artillery formation. The artillery formation gives the ability to ignore cover. So if you're seeing stealthy artisans, you can have a Basilisk with AP3, ignores cover, shoot twice with rerolls to hit, which is something like 7 or 8 hits, depending on your dice rolls with Catachans at strength 9, AP3, D3. So expected result is a dead Thunderfire Cannon. So if your opponent only has 1 Thunderfire Cannon, that's great. If they don't, well, you can spend 4 CP and take some points out of their list in the most important part. So for example, I had an opponent take aggressors. All the aggressors died turn 1. Didn't matter that he couldn't see them. Basilisk's like, I ignore cover, get out of the game. So that's a nice part of the list, but the Basilisk can't ever be hidden. They're too big. If you've ever tried to place a Basilisk out of line of sight, you'll understand. Number 1, so it's like, okay, I need a lot of firepower, but I'm not going to be able to hide enough of my vehicles. So what I did was I took a mixed Catachan and Talarn detachment, and I, instead of having 3 Talarn tank commanders, only have 2, and one of my tank commanders is Catachan, combined with 2 Catachan regular Layman Rust battle tanks for a total of 5 Layman Rust battle tanks, 3 of which have Demolisher cannons, 2 of which have battle cannons. The tank commanders all have plasma and a couple las cannons thrown in.
How excited are you about running that many Layman Rusts? I mean, just as a matter of principle.
As a matter of principle, my army looks like it's right off the front Codex cover of a guard book.
Seriously.
2 artillery pieces, 5 Layman Rust battle tanks, 90 guardsmen, 9 Bulgarians, and some characters is a very killy guard army. And again, the whole point of the list is I need the firepower in order to keep up, and I need redundancy and resiliency to get through this meta. So even if I can't hide all my Layman Rusts, I have 135-point Demolisher cannons running around, and yeah, they'll be the only tanks you can see, but they're still not easy to take down for their cost. 135 points for T8 12 wounds is not bad. And yes, I don't have invuls, so your AP5 is just going to eat them for breakfast. But if you're targeting the regular demolishers, you're not targeting my tank commanders, and the tank commanders do a lot of work. So the game plan is I can hide the 2 tank commanders that start on the board, a Catachan and a Talarn with battle cannons, outflank a demolisher cannon, Talarn tank commander, start the 2 Catachan demolishers in a threatening position, use the Vigilus formation so that even when I arrive with the demolisher from reserve and or move in advance one of the regular Catachan tanks, because all of the tanks are in the Vigilus formation, I can still double tap the demolisher cannon when I need to. So the range, the threat range is much greater. And then, yes, I only have a 24-inch range, so I'm vulnerable to melee, so I need the 9 Bulgarin to be there to just say, look, if you come closer, these guys are so ridiculously tough, they're going to be able to handle your melee unit.
Mm-hmm.
So even something like Assault Centurions can bounce off of Bulgarins if I take the Grand Strategist Warlord trait combined with a CP reroll. So I have 2 rerolls to their saves and a 3+ invulnerable save. So they're going to at least have a chance to absorb that charge and then just back up and you get removed with Demolisher cannons.
Sounds like a party, man. I can't wait to see how this all pans out. How you been doing in testing?
In testing, all the different pieces of the list need to work together perfectly. So against not Marines, this list is insane. Like,
yeah.
And then against Marines, if I get every little piece, like all the character buffs, all the tank orders, use all the different CP abilities that I know by heart. So, for example, a subtle one people don't think of is you can spend a command point as a guard player to have an officer issue 1 more order than they normally would have been able to, which includes tank commander orders. So if I need to, I can have the Catachan tank commander yell at the Demolisher cannons to shoot better for 1 CP, or to blow smoke after shooting. It's just every little detail. If I get all of it working together perfectly, and I know how the game needs to go, and I know which units need to be deleted when, I think the list can work very well. But it comes down to movement, and it comes down to knowing the list well enough to know when do I outflank the tank commander, when do I not outflank the tank commander, when do I spend CP on artillery, and when do I leave it be, what warlord traits to take. If I do all of that correctly, I think I stand a good chance into Space Marines. But on the whole, if you're a Space Marines player and you know Space Marines as well as I know Guard, you're still going to have the advantage.
Now we're going to get into the prognostication portion. The question for you, sir, is what do you think, and you can just do factions here, what do you think the composition of the top 8 is going to be? I think we talked about this on Chapter Tactics, but I'll lob it out to you again.
We did. I still think that the average number I expect is 5 Space Marines, at least 1 Eldari. I would have said 1 Tau, but I know we had a Tau player pivot to Space Marines. But I think the other faction that can easily get in there is Chaos. The Chaos super faction is super good into Marines right now, and we have some strong Chaos players who are showing up. So I think it's going to be 5+ Marines. So let's call it 4 to 6. At least 1 Eldar, at least 1 Chaos, and then the rest is a mystery.
Maybe the rest is the man right here, and we'll see. We'll see. A lot of people are reluctant to count you out, which I love. It's just a testament to the mad respect you got out there. So, who do you give respect to? What would you say, not counting yourself here? Who do you think is going to win the Las Vegas Open 2020?
The one I'm most worried about, honestly, is John Ledden. I saw his performance at SoCal. Very impressed with how he did. He is one to look out for this year. So I think that he understands how Marines are supposed to be played, and he's also a very solid player. So you'd have to take any game versus him very seriously. So for that reason, he would be my pick to get at least to the top 8, possibly win the whole thing.
John Ledden, he's a fantastic pick and a wonderful guy, and would be super deserving of it if he did pull it off. So great pick. That is the end of my list of questions. Nice and efficient. Do you have anything you'd like to add before we wrap it all up?
The LVO is definitely a special event. If you haven't been, I'd really encourage you to go. I know a lot of people are going to drop out at the last minute, so I fully expect that there will be spots that are not taken. Otherwise, I know I'm going to have a blast, and I can't wait to see everyone there.
Yeah, it's going to be really wonderful. You got anything you want to plug? Any regular shows that you're on? Hint, hint.
Just a Chapter Tactics with PDPAB himself. I definitely have some ideas on where to take that podcast in the future that I want to share with Pablo. So no spoilers yet, but we're hoping to take that podcast to the next level and turn it into something useful for every level of play and competitive 40K.
I think it's been so awesome having you join the show, along with Scary too. It's been a really, really great addition to it, and I'm happy that I still get to come hang out every now and again. So it's wonderful to get to talk to you live via the internet, and it'll be wonderful to see you in person in a couple of days. It's coming up fast, and thank you so much for your time. This was a great interview.
Thank you. You too.
Tournament news.
This is Colin.
This is Mitch.
This is Chuck.
And we're from the Best in Faction podcast, and you're listening to 40K Stat Center, where one host has a really strange nickname and the other one's called the Falcon.
Oh, that joke never gets old.
Not even once.
And you know what also doesn't get old? 2 hour and 20-minute episodes of 40K Stat Center.
Hey, at least I only had to talk for like 7 of them.
That's right. You know, that was a. I'm exhausted personally, but I got to talk to all kinds of cool people, and plus Pete. So that's never a bad day at the office. As we are wrapping up this recording, both of us are going to be boarding planes and flying to Las Vegas to begin our 40K Stat Center coverage, which hopefully you guys will be joining us on. And for everyone who's going to the LVO, well, we just provided you with 2 hours plus of incredibly quality content to keep you company while you make that trek. Pete, will you be listening to an episode of 40K Stat Center this week? This could be a rare moment for you.
No, I refuse. I mean, that being said, I might listen to the interviews as long as you timestamp them appropriately. I may just clue in to hear what these guys had to say. But in reality, I'm really excited to be going to Las Vegas. My plane boards in 9 hours, so I'm going to hit the sack here very shortly. And on my plane ride, I plan on finalizing all these super cool stats about the event. Hopefully, I'll be able to create a little article to post on Frontline Gaming website if you guys are interested, with a couple graphs and some other things. More importantly, I'll be able to use this data when the event's over, so we can kind of track unit efficiencies and all sorts of really neat info from the LVO. And guys, if you're going to the LVO and you happen to see me wandering around, Val is trying desperately to get me into some kind of bird costume. We'll see if I allow it. But yeah, feel free to say hello. Just don't make it super awkward. I'm okay with it being a little awkward.
Oh, it's always quite a bit awkward when you sneak up on a Falcon, and that's just fine. Pete, you got anything else to say?
Bye-bye.
This has been 40K Stat Center, a presentation of the Frontline Gaming Podcast Network. Like what we do? Subscribe to and rate us on YouTube and wherever podcasts can be found. Join the conversation. Follow 40K Stat Center on Facebook. You can also support the show directly by joining the Chapter Tactics Patreon and competitive 40K in general via the ITC Patreon, or by grabbing a subscription to BCP.